That car's already spoken for. It's OP's. But Rachel wasn't backing down. She came out swinging with, "Well, she doesn't even need it. She didn't pass her driving test." Welcome to r/Entitled People, where Karen is demanding OP's car. Entitled Aunt thinks she can have my car because I didn't pass my test. My grandma's sister Rachel is a piece of work. She's always had it out for me, reasons I'll never understand. But whatever, this isn't about her, it's about my car. I'm 19 and I've been working on getting my license. I took the test earlier this month, and yeah, I didn't pass. No reckless driving or anything, it's just one of those things that happens. I need to take a 4-hour course and get 24 more hours of driving practice before I can retake it. No big deal. Here's the thing though, I'm buying my grandma's old car. We worked out a sweet deal where I'm paying her way less than it's worth on a payment plan. It's perfect for me. Enter Rachel, who somehow thinks she's entitled to this car. Months ago, when Rachel found out my grandma was getting a new car, she started bugging her to sell her old one. But by then, my grandma and I had already made a deal. She told Rachel flat out, no, it's my car. We thought that was the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. So fast forward to a few days after my driving test. My family had a big Christmas get-together at my great-grandparents' house. I couldn't make it because I had to work, but apparently I missed some drama. My grandparents got there early to help set up, and Rachel showed up shortly after. First thing out of her mouth was, "Hey, Grandma, I almost have enough money for your car. I'll have the rest next week." My grandma? Not having it. She shut her down right away, saying, "That car's already spoken for. It's OP's." But Rachel wasn't backing down. She came out swinging with, "Well, she doesn't even need it. She didn't pass her driving test." Grandma wasn't fazed. She clapped back with, "Most of the family didn't pass it the first time. She'll get it eventually." That should have been the end of it, right? Nope. Rachel spent the rest of the day sulking and making snide comments about wanting a car. Mind you, this is the same woman who can barely afford her rent, let alone gas and maintenance for a car. When my grandparents got home the next day, they filled me in. I couldn't believe it. Like, how does she figure she can just claim my car? Thankfully, my grandma is way ahead of her. She drew up a contract for us to sign, so it's crystal clear the car is mine. Once I finish paying it off, we'll officially transfer it into my name. It's all locked down just in case anything happens to her. Not that I even want to think about that. Here's the kicker. Rachel doesn't even need a car. She doesn't work. She lives off disability. Her insurance already covers rides to appointments or anywhere else she needs to go. The real issue? She doesn't want to wait for transportation. She's just impatient and entitled. Honestly, I'm not even mad anymore. It's just ridiculous. Like, come on, Rachel, find a new hobby. My boyfriend got me silverware for Christmas. He thinks I'm being dramatic, but am I? My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years, but this Christmas was our first one actually spent together. I wanted to make it special, so I put a lot of thought into his gifts. I got him some really nice date night clothes, a fancy cologne he's been wanting, and even booked an appointment for him at the nicest massage place in town. In total, I spent $300. I genuinely thought he'd put the same amount of effort into my gift as I did for his. When it was time to exchange gifts, I was so excited until I opened mine. All he got me was a box of silverware. Heavy, bulky stainless steel silverware. I just stared at it for a second before asking, "Is this it?" He nodded and said, "Yeah." I tried to keep it together, but I couldn't help myself. I started crying and I asked him, "Why silverware?" His response, "Well, a few months ago, you complained about us not having enough, so this is for both you and me." That was it. I absolutely lost it. I cried harder than I probably should have, but in my defense, I've never received silverware as a gift in my entire life, and not as a Christmas gift for sure. He tried to smooth things over by saying, "If you don't like it, I'll just buy you some clothes instead." But I told him that wasn't the point. He then called me dramatic, which only made me angrier, so I snapped back with, "Fine, next year I'll just buy you silverware for Christmas." He had the nerve to reply, "No, we don't need any more now." After that, I didn't speak to him for the rest of the night. I went to bed crying because I genuinely felt like he didn't care about me or put any thought into what I might actually want. I couldn't help but think, am I being dramatic here? To add some context, I chose his gifts because he's been asking for these exact things for months. I didn't just pick random stuff I thought he'd like. I made sure to get everything he specifically wanted down to the brand. I even got him a new gaming headset. The kicker? A day before Christmas, he went out and bought himself the same headset because he needed it. so now I have to return mine. Meanwhile, his gift for me, he bought the silverware on Christmas Eve. I know this because he left the receipt in the box. In my opinion, he completely forgot to get me anything and just panicked, grabbed something, and used my random complaint about silverware as a lame excuse. For what it's worth, we did exchange wish lists. Mine included practical items for the house, but silverware was not on it, not even close. And just to clarify, I'm pregnant. Maybe that adds to the drama, but I still don't think I'm wrong here. Update. After sitting on this for a few days, I decided to confront him. He was a little annoyed that I brought it up on Reddit, but I told him, "You got me silverware. What did you expect?" He rolled his eyes and started reading through the comments. He got defensive and said, "I can't believe I'm getting hate for buying you something you literally said we needed." I replied, "Sure, it's practical, but it wasn't thoughtful. It wasn't anything personal or meaningful that I would have actually wanted. I would have been happy with something basic, just as long as it was thoughtful and showed you cared." He doubled down with, "Well, technically, you love cooking, so you'll use it, and we will use it, so I'm in the right." At that point, I asked, "Do you think your mom or sisters would appreciate silverware as a Christmas or birthday gift? How do you think they'd feel?" That finally seemed to get through to him. He paused for a moment, then admitted, "No, they wouldn't." Later, he came home with the Yellowstone collection plates I'd been wanting for months. He also promised to get me the Ura ring that I've been talking about. We are keeping the silverware because, as much as I hate the idea of it being a gift, we do actually need it. And for everyone saying, "But silverware is expensive," the set he got is a standard 45-piece stainless steel set with a serving set, not actual silver. So yeah, I still feel like I'm justified in being upset. You know why bad kids got coal? Because Santa still gave poor kids gifts, but coal was for the whole family to keep warm, not an individual gift. This dude gave you coal. Buy him toilet paper for his birthday. But honey, you said we needed it. It's a gift for both of us. A gift for both you and me is not really a gift for you. You're not being dramatic. He sucks. In my opinion, yes, you are being dramatic. It's okay not to like the gift. Have a real and honest conversation with him about it without tears and drama. He got you a gift. It wasn't what you wanted or expected. It's not the end of the world. Also, he did pay attention because you made a comment about not having enough silverware. Some people are more practical buyers, and gift giving isn't everyone's area to shine. At the end of the day, gift giving may not be the way he shows you he cares about you. If that's not something you can get past, maybe you two aren't compatible. It's okay to be frustrated, but not something to give the silent treatment over. Arborist destroys my property. I own his digital life. I live in Florida, and Hurricane Milton left my property devastated. The storm caused severe damage, including my neighbor's tree falling into my yard, taking out my fence, and landing on my pool enclosure. The destruction was substantial, but not unexpected given the storm's intensity. These things happen, and that's why insurance exists. I filed a claim right away. In the aftermath, we were left without power, internet, and limited cell service for several days. Restoration efforts began, but my neighbor decided to visit on the second day to apologize for the tree incident. They told me they had hired a licensed and insured arborist to handle the tree cleanup. The neighbor assured me the arborist would be out the next day to assess the damage and give me a quote. I thought this was great because I wouldn't have to search for one myself. The next day, the arborist showed up, inspected the damage, and gave me a quote. I told him I'd need to confirm with my insurance before he could start the work. He didn't seem thrilled about the delay, but said he'd work on the neighbor's side of the tree in the meantime. Having grown up on a farm and knowing my way around a chainsaw, I warned him how dangerous that was. He shrugged and left his business card, which proudly displayed the words, "Insured, honest, creative," along with a license number. A few hours later, my wife was outside cooking on a camp stove. This was day 3 without power, when the chainsaw started up again. I watched as he made a straight cut on the neighbor's side. I called him, yelling that I could already see the pool enclosure buckling. He kept cutting, so I told my wife to get inside and began recording everything on my phone. The moment he moved the tree trunk, the side in my yard catapulted. The pool enclosure collapsed, the retaining wall broke, the in-ground pool cracked, and the roof buckled. I was left with over $3,000 in damages to my backyard and home. Fuming, I called him again, demanding his insurance info. He said he'd email it immediately and that it was available on his website, but with limited internet access, that wasn't possible. I told him to airdrop it to me, but nothing happened. No texts, no calls, no response. He even blocked my number. That night, I managed to get some wireless data and I checked his website. It wasn't active. I also found that his LLC had expired, meaning he couldn't have insurance or the proper credentials. In fact, he had a criminal record from 2012. Suing him? No thanks. He doesn't have the money to pay any judgment, and frankly, I'm more interested in making sure no one else falls victim to his services as we recover from the storm. I bought his domain, his first and last name domains, variations of his business name, and even domains for his parents, who are real estate agents. I built a website detailing my glowing review of his character, his work, his arrest, and his lack of credentials. All 15 domains route to it. Sure, he could create a new LLC, but that would require a full rebrand, new trucks, shirts, business cards, etc. I wrote a script that automatically purchases domains and variations if he registers anything new in the state corporate registration database. Over the past 2 months, over 700 locals have visited the site. My website now ranks as the #1 result on Google when you search his business, his name, or his parents. He hasn't posted on Facebook and his phone line is disconnected. Hopefully, he's switched career paths. I was uninvited from a wedding that I spent $500 to go to. My boyfriend is a groomsman. Where do I go from here? I, 20 female, was supposed to attend the wedding of my friend and my boyfriend's best friend in just a few days. Now I'm not going anymore because I've been uninvited. And let me tell you, this whole situation is a mess. The wedding is across the country and the plane tickets cost over $500. They were non-refundable and my parents bought them for me as a Christmas gift, which was super generous but also a big deal financially. And now I'm out of the wedding and the money. So here's the story. My boyfriend is a groomsman for his best friend, the groom, and we've all been part of the same friend group for a while. When my boyfriend asked why I was uninvited, the groom said that they ran out of space and had to cut all +1s. Oh, and apparently I was never formally invited, just as a +1. Okay, fine, whatever. But then things got weird. Out of nowhere, the groom tells my boyfriend that I disrespected him, his fiancée, and his sister. Like, what? Apparently, I disrespected the fiancée by talking crap about her to the groom's sister. For context, that was a conversation the groom's sister started with me, my boyfriend, and her roommate. We were all just talking, and everyone agreed on what was being said. As for disrespecting his sister, I genuinely have no idea what he's talking about. The sister, by the way, has been a piece of work for a long time. She used to flirt with my boyfriend constantly right in front of me until he finally shut her down and cut her off. Ever since, she's been salty and cold towards me. She even tried to paint me as the bad guy to everyone else. The disrespecting my boyfriend accusation came from a TikTok I posted a while ago. It was about a celebrity that people overlook because of his personality, but I said I thought he was good looking. My boyfriend and I had already talked about this before I even posted it, and he didn't care. Still, I deleted the TikTok and apologized, but the groom latched onto it and got mad on my boyfriend's behalf. He even told my boyfriend he should dump me over it. The audacity. So basically, all this nonsense started with the sister lying to the groom. My boyfriend told me he would talk to the groom, but only because I wanted him to, not because he wanted to. I told him he shouldn't even go to the wedding, but he said he had to go because he's a groomsman. He also said if we were married or engaged, it would be different. We've been dating for over a year, so that stung. My best friend, who knows everyone involved, is out of the country for a year, but I filled her in. She's furious and thinks I should break up with my boyfriend. I'm not ready to take it that far, but I am hurt. I wanted to spend the holidays with my boyfriend and my family, but now I feel like the holidays are ruined. To make things worse, the wedding was supposed to be part of a bigger trip. My boyfriend's family lives in the same area, so I was going to stay with them for a few days, and then he was going to come visit my family afterward. Now, I don't even know what to do. For those who think I'm overreacting, let me give you a little more context. I had a rough summer. I lost one of my best friends, and I was a mess. My boyfriend and I were long distance during that time because we were both home from university. I was grieving, distant, and barely talked to him. He later admitted he thought I was going to break up with him, which made him slow to realize or shut down the sister's flirting. When he finally cut her off, she got vindictive. She's now obsessing over multiple guys, but still holds a grudge against me. The whole wedding drama is just the latest hit. Apparently, the groom's dad sent out an email uninviting all +1s because they didn't plan for how many of the bride's family members would be at the venue. The other groomsmen aren't bringing their girlfriends either, but none of them are dealing with the same level of pettiness I am. The groom introduced me to my boyfriend, and this behavior is completely out of character for him. Even the best man is on my side, and it's obvious the bride is the one stirring the pot. She's always been rude to me and my best friend for no reason. For those questioning why I say my boyfriend loves me, here's why. I'm disabled. I had a severe sports-related brain injury that left me in a coma. I had to relearn how to walk, and I'm now legally blind with no balance. I can't drive, ride a bike, or do a lot of things on my own. My boyfriend takes care of me in ways no one else except my parents and best friend ever has. He's not perfect, he's super non-confrontational, which is frustrating, but he's kind, thoughtful, and he's been there for me in many ways that matter. Here's the situation. I'm torn. Do I suck it up and try to enjoy the holidays without going to the wedding, or do I cut my losses and cancel everything? Either way, I feel like I'm stuck in a mess I didn't create, and it's eating me up inside. Everyone in your story sounds terrible. Just break up with your boyfriend and never talk to any of these people again. Your boyfriend doesn't like or respect you enough to stand up for you. His friends don't like you. Your friends don't seem to like him and his friends. Why exactly would you stay in a relationship that constantly puts you around people who don't like you? I'm an old guy who's made many bad choices, and I'm happy to say that I've also made some great choices. The most important thing is to not settle for lousy. There are nearly 8 billion people on Earth. I know finding someone you connect with is hard and feels unique, but special. But let's be honest, with 8 billion choices, that isn't really true. You're with someone who seemingly is not that into you. You're young, you have a world of options, and you can go anywhere and do anything at this point. Do not settle for a jerk. I just spent my first Christmas with my fiance's family. How can I walk things back to doing holidays separately? Lila and I have been dating for 2 years now, engaged and living together for one of them. She's super close with her family, and we fly out to visit them probably 3 to 4 times a year. I've always really liked them, and from what Lila and her family have told me, they like me too. But after this latest holiday visit, I found myself feeling way too uptight and high maintenance to want to do major holidays with them going forward. To give some context, I grew up in a big coastal city as part of a small, very type A family. My brother is estranged, and my mom passed when I was a teenager, so it's really just my dad and me now. Lila's family lives in the small rural town that she grew up in, and she's the only one who's ever left the area. Her brothers and sister all still live within an hour's drive. They're unpretentious, down-to-earth folks, which in some ways is a refreshing change from how I was raised. But I've realized that as terrible as this sounds, I've kinda hit my limit with some of it after about 3 nights here. There's obviously a lot to unpack as to why, but here's a few of the key reasons. 1. I'm allergic to cats. They have 4 of them, one of which used to be Lila's. Even on the maximum dose of Claritin and 2 rounds of allergy shots, I'm usually stuffed up and miserable after a couple of days. The obvious solution is to stay in a hotel, but we've tried that, and all it did was quadruple the price of the trip and make Lila sad that we were missing out on late-night family time. It didn't even help much because we spent so much time at their place during the day anyway, since there's not much else to do in town and they're big homebodies. 2. Vegan diet. I'm vegan, which they have a hard time accommodating since they're the meat and cheese and everything type. I try to eat some animal products while I'm here so as to not be a burden, but after so long, they really upset my stomach, even in small quantities. I've tried offering to buy and prepare my own meals, but I can tell that rubs them the wrong way since food is such a big love language for them. They try their best, they really just struggle to figure out how to offer options for me, especially since they forget to check ingredients on things like seasoning mixes and sauces. 3. Sports and cards. Their biggest pastimes are watching and talking about sports and playing cards, neither of which I was ever into growing up. I've made an effort to learn more about both over the years to participate, but I still have trouble keeping up. Overall, after about the day 4 on the trip, I felt like the villainous, high-maintenance big city fiancé from every Hallmark Christmas film ever. Lila's family has, as always, been extremely welcoming and kind to me, but I've been stuck in my own head. Maybe the biggest issue for me, though, is that this is the first Christmas where I've chosen a partner's family over spending the holiday with my dad. It felt horrible. He put on a brave face, but every time I've talked with him this week, I can tell how sad and lonely he is. The original plan was to invite him to spend Christmas with Lila's family next year, but my dad is even more of an uptight nerd than I am. He was an anesthesiologist and basically only knows how to interact with other introverted Science Y types. If I felt this out of place, I can't imagine how much more uncomfortable he'd feel in this setting. Even though my family is small compared to Lila's, the idea of never spending another Christmas in my family home actually makes me really sad, more than I expected. All this to say, I'm trying to figure out how to pitch the idea of going back to doing Christmases separately to Lila without sounding like a horrible, snooty ingrate. I thought about suggesting alternating whose family we do Thanksgiving with so that we still get regular time with each other's families, but just go back to our respective hometowns at Christmas. We don't want kids, so there won't be a who gets to see the grandkids issue in the future. But then again, how can I even bring this up without making Lila and her family feel totally rejected? Even today, she's getting teary-eyed because she's sad we only have 2 days left before we leave, while I'm just crawling up the walls. I just don't know how to approach this without hurting her or her family's feelings, and I'm at a complete loss here. I think it would be reasonable for you to just spend a few days with her family, then head home to see your dad while she stays. I think even people who get on really well with their in-laws would find 8 days to be a bit much. I know I would. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law showed up to Christmas at my house when they knew they weren't welcome. I was trying to keep things to 2 posts, but I realized while compiling everything that part 2 was just too long, so I've divided it into a part 3. For those who commented en masse for me to get cameras, I will, when I can afford it. I'm still in financial recovery from buying a house last year, and as far as I know, good cameras need a decent computer to record to, and I don't have anything more than a 3-year-old laptop that runs Windows 10. Yes, I'm aware of doorbell cameras. That will be the first kind I get. For those who kept saying that I should have just gotten my brother and sister-in-law arrested, the only reason I didn't was because they are parents. Their kids need them, and if Dan was arrested, he'd likely lose his job. And without that, his family has no money. And sister-in-law has a 3-month-old baby right now. Neither of them need to end up in jail. But you don't need jail for revenge. Police can help, yes, but I got payback without filing a police report. Would I be this merciful again? More than likely not, and they know it. I decided to wait on making an account and posting until after the new year, just in case more stuff happened, and it did. As previous readers know, my sister-in-law was making passive-aggressive posts on social media that were obviously directed at me, especially after sister-in-law had her 4th baby in November. She was posting the same repetitive nonsense over and over again. She just found semi-clever ways of rewording it. But she pretty much just kept regurgitating that she was tired of living with my parents, that there isn't enough space, she needs her own house, blah blah blah. I know I sound dismissive, but live through what I have with these people, and you'd be ready to sarcastically play tiny violins in front of them too. They're just that bad. And since I waited until January to make an account, more happened just like I thought. I stated before that I'd invited half the family for a Christmas Eve party at my house, and everyone I invited all came, even though it was a fairly long drive of around 3 to 4 hours for them. But they wanted to come and show me their support. I was praised by them a lot for how hard I'd worked to get a house of my own, and that they were sorry for everything I'd went through. I was asked why I didn't just take my camper and drive the 3 hours back to them instead of living pretty much homeless for so long. And I had to sheepishly admit that I was very attached to living around here, and I had my best employment opportunities in this area. My hometown doesn't have a lot of great job opportunities in my field, if any at all, and I wanted to make my own way as much as I could. An answer that they overall accepted. We moved on to having a rather nice party, the best I'd been in years. Some relatives even brought CDs of great Christmas albums, and I have to say, the one my uncle brought of Ray Charles was my favorite. He sings Christmas songs like no one else I've heard. It was a grand and happy time. I felt like, for once, I could just forget my past issues and enjoy the moment, but I wouldn't be writing this if it had stayed that way. About 2 hours into the party, you know who showed up. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law popped in trying to look all smiles. They didn't even knock, just walked right in through my front door like they were meant to be there. I shut off the music and told them that they needed to leave immediately. They begged to stay and said that they had brought gifts. One of my uncles stood up and yelled at them before I got another chance to speak. And he said that they don't deserve to be in my home or my life after the crap they tried to pull months earlier. And he was backed up by several other relatives. Mind you, this guy is my mother's brother, and he used to love her to pieces until he found out about the crap that went on between me and my parents. My grandparents, mother's parents, as old as they are, hurriedly got in between us and said to my parents that if they want to make amends with me, it's far too soon. And they've never been more disappointed in them than they were this past year. They had hidden their favoritism for my brother from prying eyes for a long time, but no one was fooled anymore, and they needed to make a serious effort to try and actually treat me like a son if they ever wanted to be in my life again. Then they turned to Dan and sister-in-law and said they've seen the repetitive nonsense sister-in-law keeps posting about. They're tired of it and to just let it go already. My house will not become their new home. Sister-in-law went back to her old standard of crying and had a pity party about how she should be the one living in this house and not me. She plopped down in a chair to have a tantrum and say it wasn't fair I got this house to myself when I have no family of my own and she has 4 kids that need more space, and she just wanted a better place to live in and feel like a real mom. It was petty of me, but I loudly pointed out that she sucks as a mother because she lets my mother do most of the parenting while she sits on her butt all day drinking, playing on her phone, or going out and spending all of Dan's money. And she has the nerve to complain about it. I even joked that I'm surprised her baby doesn't get drunk from drinking her milk since she drinks so much booze, which I admit went a bit too far because I got some stares. And sister-in-law demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom. I said the evidence speaks for itself, and if she wanted to be able to afford to move out of my parents' house someday, then she needs to put her college degree to some use, get a job, and learn to save money. My mother already does most of the childcare for my brother's kids anyway, so she'd have plenty of time after her baby gets a little older. My brother's eldest kid, who's 7, ran up and started kicking and screaming at me for yelling at his mom, and he kept going off on me about how his mom said that I was the bad guy who made her cry and didn't let them live here. That's when my brother grabbed his son to pull him away, but all the other relatives jumped back in, and this sort of turned into a family intervention against my sister-in-law and brother. She was crying, her new baby was crying, her kids were crying. Heck, even Dan was very nearly in tears from the verbal lashing he was being assaulted with. He ended up just sitting on the ottoman I keep shoes in by the front door and looking like a complete wreck. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. He couldn't even say 2 words to me. Not with a whole house filled with angry people ready to judge him if he tried to let out his inner golden child again. If they weren't there to get in his way, I'd bet this would have ended up a repeat of when he tried to order me around and tried to take my house months earlier. By this point, though, he had been so thoroughly humiliated that his and my parents' reputation in the family was completely destroyed because the masks were all off now. Soon after, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law all left in defeat. The party resumed, and we all avoided speaking of what just happened for the rest of the evening. Since most of the adults had been drinking, everyone stayed the night in my house. I even let some of them sleep in the camper so there'd be enough space. I admit, it also makes a good guest house. My relatives all wanted a tour of it earlier as well, and they said they couldn't believe I'd been living in it for around 2 years. I got a lot of questions about it, like what summer and winter was like, and so on. I was up earlier than anyone else Christmas morning and had a fresh pot of coffee and some ibuprofen for those spiked eggnog hangovers a few of them had. I was complimented on being a way nicer host than my parents ever were, and we all agreed to do this again next Christmas. After Christmas, sister-in-law did finally stop making posts that were obviously digs at me and deleted all of the old ones as well. But shortly after the new year, she more recently made a new post complaining about how she had tried to convince my parents to get her a camper like I did, so it could be set up in the backyard so Dan and his family could use the whole house as their family home. Well, a taste of one's own medicine is never fun, because my parents turned that idea down, vehemently I hear. No one is going to push them out of their own home, let alone their master bedroom. The post was only up for a couple of days before sister-in-law removed it, and she has hardly posted anything since then. She loves to complain, but if a tree falls and no one is around to hear it, can it still complain? Sister-in-law, I guess, has realized there's no point in doing it when no one hears her anymore, and Dan can't afford to move his family out on his salary alone anytime soon. If they end up expecting another kid in the next few years, I won't be surprised. Things mellowed down for me since then, and I've even invited friends over for a poker night. I suck at poker because I can never remember a darn thing about it. But so what? We get to drink beer and eat junk food while being merry idiots. We all loaded up on Whoppers from Burger King and just had at it the best way 4 grown men can when they just want to have a good unadulterated time and get drunk. I think maybe around summer I'll look into possibly dating someone. I'm not exactly getting younger here. Fingers crossed that goes well. My camper just sits idle in my yard now, and I admit, there were some times I went out there just to spend time in it. I did live in it for 2 years. It's like my second home, and maybe one day I'll actually get to use it for camping like it was meant to be. I've never been camping. My parents considered it a waste of time, so it'd be completely a new experience for me. This pretty much marks the end of what happened. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law have all been staying very clear of me. In fact, they seem to have gone back to acting like I don't exist, like they did before I bought a house. Not like that bothers me at all. It's better that way. But they'll inevitably come back in some way. I know they will. I just wonder what kind of stupid thing they'll do next. If anything notable like all of this ever happens again, I'll make another post if this account is still active. I hope OP can have a movie made about his life. Can you imagine how good it would be? Am I the jerk for dropping out as my brother's best man a couple of days before his wedding? I'm 36, and my brother, who's 30, got married this past weekend. I was supposed to be his best man. The wedding was 12 and up because they didn't want to have to deal with toddlers and such, which is fair enough. A lot of guests do have younger kids though, so they decided to have a venue nearby with a professional sitter if parents wanted to drop their kids off there. My wife has some injuries that make her slow to respond and understand what others are saying, and she needs help sometimes with her food. I'll cut it up into small pieces. This doesn't mean she's nothing, and she's a smart, capable woman. They had the rehearsal dinner. At the end, my sister-in-law pulled me aside, saying she had to discuss something with me. She said they told us about the additional venue they'll be having for their wedding. I said yes. Then she asked if my wife had any particular food preferences, and they would order extra food for her there. I was extremely confused and told her we already gave our meal choices, but she said my wife would be better suited at the second venue. I remember just sort of staring at her for a bit and asking if she was serious, that she expected my wife to be with the babysitter. Sister-in-law said it's not like that, and they're just looking out for my wife, and I don't have to feed her or anything, and can have fun at the wedding. My brother came over, and I told him I've literally never heard such crap, that they think my wife is a kid to be left with a sitter. Brother said it's for the best, and if I want, I can always go over and check on her. I told him if this is the way they're treating my wife, I have no desire to be a part of their crap show, and dropped out as best man. Well, all heck broke loose, and some people agreed that I was right, but my parents texted, called, everything, saying that they don't agree with this either, but it's their choice, and to get over my ego and still come. I didn't end up going. I did hear that they got one of the groomsmen to give a speech, and overall it was fine, but my brother sent me a text saying he expected better from me. I replied back saying I expected better from him. My sister-in-law sent a long text that I ruined their big day on purpose and made them look bad. Not the jerk. Sister-in-law ruined the day herself, nothing to do with you. Also, can't believe your parents' reaction either. OP. I mean, my parents didn't agree with this, but they said to put it aside for one day, and the wedding wasn't the place to make a stand, then yell at them later if I wanted to. A couple of others also said this, which is why I'm doubting if I went too far for not just attending and then telling them later. The last thing I wanted to do was miss my own brother's wedding, but I just feel like they're the ones that put me in this position. My wife always comes first. No, you tell me right now exactly what's taking so long. Your wish is my command. More Drivethru Mayhem ensues last night at your local Mindy's. We've had a lot of terrible and weird things happen lately, and as our sister store we call Mindy's Ray Road is perpetually closed, we get our usual rush of customers combined with all of the mobile and Uber Eats and DoorDash and Food Schlaps and you name it spilling over to our location. It's hectic. We're running out of things. It's literal mayhem. I take order number 521 as I begin to assemble their drinks, as is the process. I notice that the 4 drinks they ordered suddenly can't be made due to the flavor being out. I need to change out the syrup to the freestyle machine. Just as I realize the machine's running out, I hear the bloop that alerts me to the entry of a new customer in the drive-thru. I'm about to greet them, which I always manage to do within 2 seconds of approaching the speaker box, but these people were yelling right as they pulled up, saying, "Yeah, hello, hello." I lay a little louder into my already interrupted greeting, saying, "Hi, welcome to Mindy's. Please hold for a minute while I—" "Oh my God, you talked to the last guy." The customer chimes in. More attitude was in this than I can accurately depict. I usually say that I'll be with them in a second, but this time I was about to say that they'd need to hold on for a couple of minutes due to my situation. They interrupted, so I just took care of the things that I needed to. I managed to get the keys from my manager to open the closet to get the drink mix and pour the 4 drinks and then set the next order. While I was running all over the place, I heard increasingly angrier grumbles along the way. So I did my due diligence and said, "Just another minute or two," every so often. I thought this helped. Evidently it didn't. As soon as I'm back to my ordering machine and re-greet the customers with a, "Thanks for waiting, how can I help you?" I hear the following ear-piercing rant. "What in the world took you so long?" I reply as kindly as possible, despite having someone threaten me earlier this week. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about that, but I can take your order now." She went full local again, saying, No. You tell me right now exactly what's taking so long. Enter malicious compliance. What could have been an easy 30 seconds of ordering and then beginning to make her family's food turned into a debacle now, thanks to malicious compliance, I'll tell you exactly what's taking so long. Okay, well, I didn't start off in drive-thru, actually. I was on the grill first. I really liked the grill. I missed the freedom more than anything. You know what I mean? This was a rhetorical question, but I know that the machine that connects them to my headset was still on and unable to not be because the line was so backed up. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, well, the customer 3 cars before you ordered a Sprite. Well, actually a Sierra Mist, but settled for Sprite. Because Coke products, you know? That Sprite was the last Sprite, and I knew it. So I tried to get a hold of my manager. I went on telling them the story forever. During this whole thing, I could hear an occasional beginning of a sentence or two, but look who all of a sudden didn't yell or scream anymore. Her frustration was at a boil though. I just didn't realize it yet. Somebody did boil over besides her, the car behind this group. They were honking the whole while. It was like a symphony of people telling their life stories overlapping one another. Samantha, my coworker, even chimed in and backed up how busy and crazy it was this week. I then finished with I guess that leads us up to right this moment. Would you like to order? They replied with an exasperated, well, I didn't mean your whole life story. Ask and ye shall receive. As petty and snide as this may seem, it was just what I needed to get stuff off my chest and let me prepare for the next group of customers who lie in wait to mistreat me another day. Am I the jerk for making homemade food for everyone except my brother's stepdaughter? I, 27 female, am not a professional chef, but I have taken a bunch of cooking classes and love making elaborate meals for friends and family. About 2 years ago, my brother, Greg, 25 male, married Cheryl, 34 female. Cheryl has a daughter from a previous relationship, Becca, who's 9, who has several health conditions, including celiac and a severe dairy allergy that requires her to carry an EpiPen. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner at my house for my parents' wedding anniversary. I made a fancy 5-course dinner, and in addition to my parents, I invited 4 close family friends, Greg, Cheryl, and Becca, and my sister, her boyfriend, and their twins, who are both 8. Because of Becca's food restrictions, I found a restaurant in town that specializes in gluten-free, dairy-free, as well as other allergen-free food, and arranged for them to make a full meal for Becca that I could pick up in advance for the party. I've made a variety of specialty meals in the past. For example, keto meals when my friend was following that diet, and I liked the challenge, but knowing how serious Becca's restrictions were, I didn't trust myself to make her meal. I have ADHD and get easily distracted, and even if I used the wrong spoon or didn't completely wash some flour off of a bowl, it could make her incredibly sick. I thought the takeout solution was fine, but when I served the food, I saw Cheryl looking at Becca's plate with a stony face. For her part, Becca started eating and seemed fine. Cheryl whispered to Greg, and Greg asked if he could talk to me in the kitchen. When we got there, he said that it was unbelievable that I couldn't be bothered to make something for Becca, that they had been bragging about what a great cook I am to her, and that he knew I'd make keto, vegan, and other complicated kinds of foods in the past. Now she would feel left out because she didn't get to eat what the rest of the family was eating. He said that it was obvious that I didn't care about making his stepdaughter feel like a part of the family and that they were leaving. Greg, Cheryl, and Becca then left, which put a damper on the rest of the party. I felt like I did my best at the time, but in hindsight, I wonder if I should have tried harder to make Becca feel included since she is a relatively new addition to our family. Am I the jerk? For some reason, I read that and I felt sad for you. I'm honestly in disbelief you thought you did something wrong. You were incredibly thoughtful in how you handled ensuring she had a meal suitable for her. You have ADHD and are well aware that mistakes are so easily made, so to ensure you didn't seriously put her health in danger, you decided the safest option was to contact a restaurant to provide something. I can't stress this enough. You are not the jerk. Same here. If someone had gone to the trouble of making sure my kid didn't have a reaction to dinner, I would have been grateful, not upset. I don't have ADHD, but if I didn't cook for someone with allergies on a regular basis, I definitely would forget something. You are most definitely not the jerk, and it's sad they couldn't appreciate your effort. Not the jerk. If you accidentally made a keto meal wrong, it would upset their diet. It sounds like if you made Becca's meal incorrectly, it could have major medical consequences. You're not wrong for not wanting that stress on you. Did your brother understand the reason why you ordered her a special meal? That you were concerned about doing something that might make her sick? My sister-in-law has food restrictions, and I've never heard her say anything but appreciation when others have done something similar for her. He was very angry when we talked, so I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I spoke to Cheryl about this issue when she asked if I could make an allergen-free cake for Becca's birthday last year. I told her about my anxiety over possibly making her sick and offered to make flower decorations if she could find a suitable cake, which she did. I mistakenly assumed, based on this conversation, that she understood my hesitation to cook for Becca. Am I the jerk for being disrespectful to my boyfriend's sister? I'm 24, female. My boyfriend, Zach, 24, male, his mother passed when he was only 11. His father worked a lot, so Zach's older sister, Elise, who's now 30, basically became the woman of the house, for a lack of a better term. She cooked all the meals, cleaned the house, drove Zach to school and other activities, etc. She was extremely parentified, and I do feel for her on that front. She went to a local college. Because of all this, Zach and Elise are very close. He has a lot of respect for her. Zach and I have dated for nearly a year. We are very different in terms of backgrounds. He's much more reserved than I am. Before me, he spent a lot of his weekends gaming or just hanging out with a small group of friends. I tend to go out. I work hard all week and want to enjoy the time I have off. Zach is a shy, somewhat nerdy guy, and I do think I've broken him out of his shell a little, pushing him to do things out of his comfort zone. Elise and their father have made several comments about him changing. She's very nice and cordial when we see each other, but she's made several comments about Zach not needing to change who he is. Sunday, Zach invited myself, some of his friends, his dad, sister, brother-in-law, and niece over to watch the game. At one point, vacations got brought up. I mentioned I was trying to convince him to go on a 2-day local cruise with me, as he's never been on one. Zach reminded me he's not the biggest fan of boats. I pointed out he's never been on one, and we could rent one to take out so he could get used to it. He was somewhat on the fence. Myself and one of his buddies were trying to help him see it's not that bad. Elise butted in and said, "If he doesn't want to go, then I'm sure you can find someone else to go." I said I was pretty sure I could talk him into it. She asked why I would want him to go if he really didn't want to. I said, of course I would never try to force him to go, but it's just something to think about. She repeated that he doesn't like boats and that I should respect that. I rolled my eyes, not really understanding why she was so adamant on this, and said she needed to relax. She's not his mother. She shouldn't care this much about the situation. Elise was clearly upset by the comment, but didn't say anything else. The subject got changed, and I thought all was well. A little later, Zach asked for my help getting something out of his room. Once in there, he told me I was out of line for how I spoke to his sister. I said she was the one that was getting up in our business. Zach said that I kept pushing it and got upset when I said, "Well, clearly she and your dad didn't push you enough to try new things." He said I was being disrespectful and needed to apologize to Elise. I laughed and said no, she needs to butt out. Zach finally asked me to leave. I did, aggravated. I really thought my friends would be on my side, but they said I crossed a line. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You're saying, "I managed to break him out of his shell," says a lot here. It seems like you're constantly pushing him to do things he wouldn't necessarily do otherwise, and I think this is not healthy. What's wrong with being shy and not wanting to do some things? Your way isn't the only correct way, and you did push him on this occasion too, and you were being disrespectful to his sister. I get that you want to get him out of his comfort zone, but ganging up on him with his friend trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to is called bullying. It's you deciding you know what he'll like better than he does and ignoring what he has to say. He's the one who should have spoken up, but likely didn't want to embarrass you by telling you to shut up. His sister stepped in to stop a bully. So yeah, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. Your boyfriend does not like boats. If it's clear that someone doesn't want to do a particular vacation plan, you attempting to pressure him into it makes it extremely clear that this is a vacation for you, not the both of you. Find something you can both enjoy, which may or may not require you both stepping out of your comfort zone, but to a lesser degree than something one person has expressed a strong dislike of doing. Remember that not only is his sister not his mother, but she's extremely close to it. You are also not his mother. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to get over himself and to quit holding a 10-year grudge? My brother-in-law, married to my sister, is a general contractor. About 10 years ago, my dad and brother were building a deck at my parents' home. They asked my brother-in-law if they could borrow his skid loader when he said no. They prepared the ground as best they could without the skid loader, but got to the point where they couldn't go on without it. They went to my sister's house to ask again, but found out brother-in-law was out of town. They talked my sister into letting them borrow it, so she took them down to his construction lot and they hooked it up to my dad's truck. This next part I'm not sure of since I don't know much about towing, but from what I was told, Dad's truck wasn't big enough or powerful enough to tow the skid loader on the dump trailer, so he lost control and wrecked. The truck, trailer, and skid loader were totaled. The insurance was barely enough to cover the medical costs in the truck. There was none left over to cover brother-in-law's stuff. When he got back to town, he exploded. He threatened to sue, and things just went downhill from there. My parents are not rich, and he wouldn't have gotten anything, so in the end, Sister talked him into letting it go. However, from that day on, he would have nothing to do with our family. He doesn't come for birthdays, holidays, nothing at all. Next month is our parents' 50th anniversary, and we're planning a big family gathering to celebrate. We're also chipping in to send our parents on a cruise to Mexico because they've never been out of the country. I spoke to Sister about it the other day, and she said she's coming with the kids, but brother-in-law is not coming. I was fine with that, but when we were discussing their portion of the cruise money, I heard him yelling in the background to deduct their portion from the cost of the skid loader and dump trailer. That really upset me, so after my call with my sis, I called my brother-in-law and told him to get over himself. I told him Dad and bro made a mistake, but that was 10 years ago and he needs to let it go. He said he'll let it go when they give him the money that he lost. I told him he's a jerk for holding on to a grudge and putting money in the way of a family relationship. Sister called me a few minutes ago and said they're not coming and that I was out of line. We argued for a bit, and that's where it stands. I don't think I'm wrong for telling him to let go of the past, but they're not coming to the anniversary party, so now I'm not sure. You're the jerk. Your family stole $50,000 in work equipment from your brother-in-law. They didn't pay him back. By the sounds of it, they showed zero remorse, and he should just get over it? You and your family sound massively entitled. Your brother-in-law is smart to cut the lot of you off clean. You're the jerk. So are your parents. They shouldn't have stolen his property, and yes, it was theft. They should have made him whole before replacing their own property. They should have apologized. They should have given him the money back at some point over the last 10 years. Would have considered everyone sucks here if your parents had made any effort to take responsibility. What's missing from your story is where your father and brother took accountability for their actions, which caused real damages for another person and worked sincerely to make up for it. If the insurance didn't cover everyone's damages, then after necessary medical costs, the skid loader should have been fixed because your brother-in-law was the innocent party. Instead, your dad put that money towards his own truck. Your brother-in-law was extremely kind not to sue. It's been 10 years, so how much of the damages have your father and brother paid back? If the answer isn't all of it, then not only are they complete and utter grade A jerks, but so are you. You're the jerk in this latest chapter of the story for blaming the victim for not just rolling over and accepting his awful in-laws' actual criminal behavior. Good for your sister for standing by the right person in this chapter. Karen keeps asking, why are you still single? My response shuts her up quick. I, 36-year-old single female, get asked this question a lot, and since it comes from coworkers, extended family, friends of friends, then responding rudely by saying, none of your darn business, sweetie, still doesn't seem to work. Not anymore. I try to keep good relationships with those around me for a number of reasons, but this question just ticks me off, especially since the reason for why I'm single is pretty awful, and so it's very personal. They feel sorry for me. I can see it because they list all my good traits, then say it's a shame no man is willing to win it. What the heck? Unfortunately, I get caught off guard a lot by people, especially women, asking this question, but since I can't control the fact that they ask, I really wish they'd just leave me the heck alone. I decided to use this method that I came up with very recently. For example, if a woman asks why I'm still single, I just tell her, because I still haven't met your husband or boyfriend yet, while acting somewhat flirty in the moment. So far, it seemed to shut them up. It's kind of passive-aggressive, yes, but I just feel some sort of power doing it. Well, a few weeks ago, my sister introduced me to her boyfriend's sister, and once she sits down, she asks, how old are you? I tell her, and she gasps, and goes on to ask, why are you still single? I look at her and say, it's because I still haven't met your boyfriend yet. She has a boyfriend, yay her, in the flirtiest tone I could muster, while also pulling the duck face pose. She looks at me in utter shock, then puts her coffee down while my sister stares at me like, what the heck? Conversation gets awkward, and a few minutes later she gets up saying she wasn't feeling well and leaves quietly. My sister blows up at me asking why I just said that, and I start arguing with her about how this woman was a snoop. She told me to get over myself and act my age and stop being childish, which she assumed is the reason why I'm still single and will always be, because no man wants to be with such a nut job. Her boyfriend said I upset his sister and is expecting apologies from me because of what I said to her. So, am I the jerk? I'm going to say a soft, you're the jerk. Yes, the questions are invasive and unkind, and yes, you have the right to your privacy, but there's no reason to be nasty about it. I 100% agree that people questioning why you're single are annoying and offensive. I get it, hence the soft, you're the jerk, but there are better ways to deflect or get someone to mind their own business. Personally, I'd use the why method. When someone asks you an invasive question, just say, why, in a neutral and curious tone. They will follow up with, I'm curious or something. Reply with, why. Basically, continue to ask why to every response and enjoy watching them flounder as they attempt to explain and justify their invasive interest. It's a similar technique to saying, I don't get it, can you explain it to me? When someone makes an offensive joke at someone else's expense, and watching them flounder as they have to explain why it's funny to be offensive. Eventually, one of two things will happen. They will get bored of the why and change the subject, or they will get frustrated. Either way, you keep the moral high ground, because no reasonable person can say you were being offensive by just asking why. The key is to keep your tone neutral, curious, as though you genuinely don't understand the question. Try it and see. Everyone sucks here. It's incredibly rude to ask someone why they're single, but your response is obnoxious and trashy too. I agree with this. I can't comment on OP's situation and what she's dealt with, but would it be wrong to comment, it's a personal reason that I won't disclose, and leave it at that? If they pry further, then you say it one more time and leave if it goes any further. I think it is incredibly inappropriate that people continue to ask these questions to her, but I find it is always better to handle all things with class and strict boundaries. Well, who do you think is the jerk? Please let us know. Some people just can't mind their own business. Daughter refuses to go to school, so I changed the Wi-Fi password. My 17-year-old daughter, Kim, is going through a hard time with her mental health. It's gotten to a point where Kim refuses to go to school almost every single day. In January, she went to school 4 days total. We've been working with the school to allow Kim to get homework digitally, but she doesn't keep up with it. My wife and I have gotten her into therapy as well as counseling through her school last fall. But results of that have been mixed, as I don't think Kim is putting in the necessary work on her end. She is on medication, but we're still working with her doctor to find the right combination to meet her needs. If Kim had her way, she'd just spend all day in her bed with her laptop. She doesn't do anything to help around the house, doesn't work, doesn't go to school, doesn't eat meals with the family, just sits in her room on her computer all day and all night. We've tried so many different things, and nothing has seemed to make any positive change. It's infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time. One constant throughout all of this has been her computer and phone. She's on them constantly. No matter how many times we bring this up to her that maybe she needs to spend less time in front of a screen, she insists that isn't the cause of her problems. So finally, I decided to start changing our Wi-Fi password to one that only my wife and I know. I change it every night before we go to sleep, and I don't change it back to the one the kids know until after we get home from work. Kim was not happy about this and used up all of our family plan data in less than a week. We had to change our plan to restrict her usage. At first, my wife was on board with this, as she also felt that Kim was spending too much time on her phone and computer. But after Kim basically throwing a gigantic tantrum about it, my wife is not so sure. Kim tried to use the argument that if we want her to do schoolwork from home, she needs the internet, but she wasn't doing the work anyway, so that argument didn't really hold water for me. She tried saying that she needs the internet to have access to her support network, but we take her to therapy and counseling in person, and I feel if she put more effort into those, then maybe she would make some progress. Kim hates me for this and told me that restricting her internet access in this day and age is mistreatment. My wife is also wavering on this idea because Kim isn't showing any positive changes and she still isn't going to school. Every single day is an emotional roller coaster for me. Anger, frustration, embarrassment, futility, failure, fear. I know Kim is struggling, and seeing your kid go through something that you can't fix is horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. All I'm trying to do is gently force Kim to focus on her issues and take steps necessary to address them, and make progress towards being a functional adult. She has 3 acceptance letters to colleges that she's very unlikely to attend now. I'm leaning towards not the jerk because this is an impossible situation and I really feel for all of you. It's very possible that your daughter's support network is online. It's also very possible that this is toxic and could be detrimental to her mental health. Without actually speaking with her, it's impossible to know. So that she's not held back with support and schoolwork, could you allow her Wi-Fi access with parental controls on it? If it were me, I'd be looking to block access to any potentially harmful material. It might be worth exploring with her and her therapist to find a way that she can use it for support, but in a healthy way, and ensure that she's not being bullied online or anything. More than anything though, you need to show her your unconditional love for her. Tell her you love her and often. Talk to her, and more than that, listen to what she says, both verbally and non-verbally. She sounds as if she might have pretty severe depression, so you need to show her that you're being supportive and not punishing her by removing her access to the internet, but protecting her from harm. Seek professional support for yourself too. You'll need someone to support yourself as you navigate through this together. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for changing the Wi-Fi password or not? Please let us know. I can't even deny it. I don't think I'd last a day without internet. Am I the jerk for sending my niece to go live with her other uncle? My sister-in-law passed 12 years ago, and my brother passed 4 years ago. They had a daughter who is 13 years old now. After my brother passed, both me and my sister-in-law's brother tried to adopt my niece, but as my niece didn't have much of a relationship with her mom's family, I was obviously the better option, so I ended up adopting her. Recently, my niece has got this very annoying habit that whenever we have a disagreement, she says she would rather go and live with her other uncle. I know she doesn't mean it because 1, she barely knows her other uncle, and 2, I have a high-paying job and I'm able to provide things that most people aren't able to provide, so she's too spoiled to be able to live with anyone else. About a week ago, it happened again. She told me she wants to go live with her other uncle. This time, I told her to go pack a bag. She went to her room. An hour later, I went up to her room and I asked her if she's ready. She said she didn't mean what she had said and doesn't really want to go. I told her that she should go anyway. She'll stay for a week and then she can tell me if she wants to stay there or come back home. She insisted that she already knows where she wants to stay, but I told her to get in the car and I drove her there. After a week, I called and asked if she wanted to come home and she said yes. However, she hasn't been talking to me. My family heard what happened and now everyone is mad at me and thinks I'm a jerk. Edit. I decided to make an edit and let you know how things are going. We decided to have a conversation about it. I asked her how they treated her and she told me that while her uncle was nice, her aunt made her feel unwelcome and she didn't feel good about being there and she doesn't want to live with them and she thinks I was a jerk for sending her even after she apologized. I apologized and told her that even if she wanted to live with them, I would still bring her back home because I love her too much and can't live without her, so she's stuck with me. She has some conditions for forgiving me. For example, she's forcing me to binge watch shows with her, and she wants a daddy-daughter day, and I'm guessing that I'm not going to like any of her plans based on the evil grin on her face, but I'll do whatever makes her happy. There were a lot of not the jerk votes. While I'm thankful, I don't agree with them. I was definitely being a jerk. She was just being a typical teenager. I had this upbringing. I was adopted by relatives who would pull this, "I don't have to keep you here," anytime I was a normal bratty adolescent. Now I have abandonment issues. You're the jerk. Stop pawning your bad kids that you're raising on other people in hopes that it will teach them a lesson. Talk to them. Deal with the hard parts. Get them in therapy if you need or want to. They're just kids, but they're learning from you and it's your job to raise them. My goodness, I get so sad reading these types of posts. Why is it that everyone here thinks OP is at blame? The OP never threatened the niece by sending her away. Read what was written and comprehend. OP's niece, who he adopted and brought into his home, asked to leave and go live with her other uncle. He didn't pawn her off, he obliged with her request. You're making OP out to be something he's not, and making OP think he did a bad job. This niece was the one threatening and wanting to leave in order to hurt the OP. OP showed her the grass on the other side for a week. OP is not the jerk here. The niece wanted to mess around and find out. I doubt she will say anything about living with her other uncle again. The niece was being a 13-year-old, whose parents are literally both gone. 13-year-olds say the dumbest things all the time. You don't take them seriously, and you sure don't send them away. It's called being an adult and realizing that a kid is acting like a kid. Also, generally speaking, kids don't mess around and find out with adults. You know, because adults should be better than that, more mature than that. Emphasis on should here, because clearly in OP's case, they very much aren't better than that and would rather ship off their 13-year-old niece than sit down and try to figure out exactly why she's saying this stuff in the first place. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his niece? Please let us know. Oh, you mean OP is trying to teach his niece that her actions have consequences? And that it's not a good idea to say things you don't mean in order to manipulate other people? Oh, how could he do such a thing? Bully your flatmate? I'll ruin your fun. I work in student halls of residence for a smallish campus-based university in the UK. This involves malicious compliance after a group of students had been bullying one of their flatmates. I'll call her Sarah, and happened within the last 10 years. Sarah was neurodivergent and had plenty of interests. None of these interests involved going out partying. She preferred to live in a quieter, cleaner environment. The other four all had similar interests to each other. Very typical first-year in-hall stuff. There were kitchen parties after clubbing at 3 a.m., alleged usage of things they shouldn't have been using, post-party leaving strangers passed out on the kitchen floor, empty bottles everywhere, and piles of rubbish and washing up. Generally messy. Normally, a student would report this. We give out contact details that can be used for anonymous reporting, or we'd offer flat meetings to help them find compromises, like agreeing to limiting parties to a certain number of times a week, or checking with each other before planning one in case someone has a big deadline and needs quiet on a specific night, cleaning rotations, etc. And the cleaners could issue fines if it was a mess on weekly cleaning day. But Sarah was terrified of reporting anything and found interacting with staff very difficult. We only knew there was an issue because she would tell her mom and her mom would tell us. We had offered a swap, but she told her mom that she didn't want to move as it would disrupt her routine and it wasn't fair for her to be punished when she had followed the rules. So we were working with her and her mom to try and get her to the point where she could formally report it, referring her to well-being services and doing random flat checks at night to see if we could catch the students doing things they shouldn't have been. This carried on until term 2, and by then, the four had already clearly decided that they just didn't like her and thought that she was weird. The inconsiderate behavior had escalated to bullying. She'd recorded them calling her some horrible names and played it back to us, but again refused to send us the recording and wouldn't formally report it. I appreciate she wasn't helping herself, but I don't think she was being deliberately difficult. She just really struggled with certain things. Her flatmates had definitely figured out what pushed her buttons. We were trying to mediate, flat meetings, trying to enable her to feel safe in reporting their behavior formally, etc. But it was obvious to staff that they wanted to push her to move out, and they had a friend who was always hanging out in their kitchen who clearly wanted to move in. One day, she must have snapped, and she threw a glass across the room, causing it to smash on a wall. It didn't hit anyone, but they jumped on this, and all their parents were on the phone about how their daughters were living with someone dangerous. At this point, we have no evidence of their bullying or breaches of their tenancy, but they have evidence against her and had all en masse filed reports. We have no choice but to move her. Here comes the malicious compliance. Not even before we had sent cleaners into her old room, we start getting requests for the friend to move in. Apparently, a supportive person would help with the trauma, and someone else in the room would give them closure. The idea of them getting their way in this manner infuriated me. Instead, we asked one of our older and more experienced resident advisors, a final year student, if they could move in. This is someone they would not be able to bully and had a good idea about what had been really going on in that flat. It was a nice flat in a very new building, so it was a bit of a perk for them as well. The best bit was the parents ringing to complain about how we had moved a stranger in and how upset their daughters were. When I explained we had put a very experienced resident advisor in there who had training in peer support, all their arguments collapsed. The requirements, supportive person and room relet for closure. Tick and tick. Sorry, no more crazy parties for your daughters this year. P.S. Sarah didn't have any further action taken against her for the glass throwing. She did actually get some additional well-being involvement, and it was deemed that the move was penalty enough, an incident unlikely to reoccur. She loved her new flat. It was a single occupancy studio in a really nice building, and we kept her on lower rent. Her mom said the studio was perfect as she could control the mess and no one moved her stuff. She felt safe. She actually rebooked a studio for the following year and did go to finish her degree. I have no idea what happened to the other students. I hope they look back and reflect on what they did. But sadly, part of me doubts it. At any rate, given we had ruined their party venue, I hope they managed to get some studying done. Am I the jerk for refusing to get a job and pay rent at my parents' house? I had my 18th birthday 3 days ago. On the day after my birthday, my stepdad told me he wants me to start paying rent to live in his house. My stepdad is quite Christian and conservative. I don't expect to live rent-free here forever, but I know my stepdad is coming from a spiteful place. He and my mom have 2 kids and 9 years of marriage. I'm not his own, and it's clear that I'm a reminder that his wife was a divorced woman before him. So of course I'm being treated like a guest, and my mom is allowing it. He doesn't need my money to pay rent. Plus, I don't have much, and he wants £100 per month. We still have lots of time for this, but I bet his kids won't be paying rent while they're in school. My A-level exams, UK school system, start in mid-April and last up till July. I'm doing STEM subjects, and I'm hoping to fulfill my offer for a medicine course at a good university. I'm aiming for 4A, which will take a lot of studying, and if I have to get a job, it will be difficult to maintain that level of studying that I need to. I'm literally moving out in September. I don't know if the university finances differ in the US, and I know this platform is predominantly American. So in the UK, uni is funded by loans, and these loans cover everything and are 100% my responsibility, and my parents won't be financing anything. So it honestly just feels vindictive. And it's not like I'm unproductive. I'm trying to save the money I had left from my last job for when I move out too, and paying my stepdad £800 when he doesn't need it feels spiteful and like he's punishing me and making my life harder for being born. Basically, my aunt, mom's sister, who isn't fond of him, said he's being ridiculous and told me to come live with her. Her house is an hour away, but my school is in the middle, 30 minutes each way if that makes sense. She said she has a guest room free so I can save my money for uni. This benefits me most, so I took her up on the offer. My mom keeps crying that I'm leaving already, so my stepdad is annoyed. We got into an argument where he said he's just treating me like a tenant to prepare me for the real world, so I said, "Do tenants not have the right to leave?" Which annoyed him further. My stepdad says I'm hurting my mother and taking resources from my aunt because I'm too entitled to pay rent. This is just what's best for me. I said I'd visit. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Actions meet consequences. Your stepdad tried to flex on you, and his power play backfired. Your mother may be crying, but she let him do it. That house is half hers, and so is the decision to charge you rent. She's not blameless here. Your aunt's resources are none of your stepdad's business. OP, move out. Work hard to crush your exams and be super considerate and make yourself very useful in your aunt's household. Shovel the walk, do dishes, walk the dog, whatever's needed. And if you don't know, ask. Please don't come back to this house to visit if your stepdad is home, ever. Your mom can darn well find her way to your aunt's house without Mr. Flex on her arm. God bless your aunt for sheltering you from stepdad and his nonsense. And don't feel obliged to invite him to your graduations either. Can I speak to your manager? A few years ago, I worked as a cashier at a fast food restaurant. I don't eat fast food, so I don't know how it is with other places, but with this establishment, nothing was free. You want sauce with your tacos? That's 50 cents, please. Substitute your sour cream with guacamole? Sorry, you have to pay for that. You want ranch with your salad? That'll be extra. All of these prices were very prominently displayed on a giant menu in the middle of the lobby, by the way. Now, I was paid minimum wage. I, nor any of the other cashiers, would give a darn about all of that. It also made the prices ridiculous, as a lot of customers naturally wanted add-ons, so usually we wouldn't charge for most of those things. But we could only get away with that when our manager was not out in the front, as she was the strict type, yell at you in front of the customers for giving away a free sauce type. On a slow day, an older woman walked in and ordered a salad. By the time it got to the register, she loaded it with a bunch of extras. To be completely honest, there was no rhyme or reason to what I chose to charge people for. It really depended on my mood. Her salad was pretty accessorized, so I felt like I had to charge for something. But I was having a good day, so I just rang her up for the salad and extra guacamole, and that's all. It was something like $12.50. She immediately started to complain about the price. I explained to her that it was $11.50 for the salad and $1 for the guac. That's ridiculous. It shouldn't cost that much just for a salad. Even $11 is way too much. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's the price on the menu. Why did you raise the price so high? A salad should not cost that much. I tried to explain to her that I was just a cashier and I did not, in fact, control the menus, but she would have none of it and only grew increasingly rude. Then she dropped the classic dreaded line, "Can I speak to your manager?" I hesitated, looked her in the eye, and said, "You don't want to do that." "No, get your manager, right now." So I went to the back and told my manager that there was a customer who wanted to speak with her. She came to the register with me, looked at the salad, looked at what I rang up, and immediately started going off about how I didn't add the salsa, the chips, the house dressing. I was used to this, so I just stood there and stared at the customer as my manager screamed at me. The customer stared back, dumbfounded, as my manager took over the register, corrected the order, and left without acknowledging her at all. The salad came out to be $16.50. The woman paid and left without another word. Am I the jerk for not taking my stepkids to Disneyland with me and my disabled son? Disneyland has this thing where people with disabilities get different treatments with regards to lines. It works out great for us. My wife has 2 kids from before. They also love Disneyland. When we go as a family, we get faster access to some rides together, and when they want to go on a ride that he doesn't like, my wife can wait in line with them and we meet up afterwards. Sometimes we switch, and my wife will take my son around while I wait in line with my stepkids. However, when my wife or one of my sisters can't come with us, I just take my son. My wife has also taken just her kids when my son doesn't want to go. We've also taken just my stepkids and left my son with my sisters when he didn't feel like going out in public. This last weekend, I had time to go to the park and my son asked. I asked my wife, but she didn't want to go. I checked with my sisters, but they were too busy, so I took my son without my stepkids. When we got home, my in-laws were there fighting with my wife. The kids had called them and said I was excluding them from going to Disneyland. The thing is, they never volunteer to watch the kids when they go. They hate the crowds and the lines. They said that I'm treating their grandkids like they're less important than my son. My wife, who was dealing with a migraine, was almost in tears. I helped my son get cleaned up and put him to bed. Then I came back and tore a strip off of them. I said that their grandkids are just kids and they don't understand yet why they cannot always get their way, but that they are adults and presumably are able to understand why I couldn't take 3 kids by myself. I couldn't leave my son, and my stepkids are too young to wander the park by themselves. I volunteered to take them next time so they could watch their grandkids while I took care of my son. Or they could watch my son and I would wait in line with the kids. They said they didn't want to do that, but still said that I was being a jerk for not taking their grandkids. So I presented another option. They could pay for a helper to come with us for the day. That way, if my wife can't come, I can still take the kids. I did ask that they also pay for the days I could not go, so my wife could take all 3 kids. They said that I was being ridiculous, so I told them unless they were willing to help, they could stay out of how we do things in our family. I went and talked to the 3 kids, and I told them that I understood why they called their grandparents, but that they had to learn that sometimes they would have to not go to stuff until they were old enough to be safe by themselves. I made sure they knew I wasn't mad at them and said that I would take them the next time I could schedule it. My wife said I was right in how I handled stuff, but that her parents were mad at me for putting them in their place. Sounds like you and your wife are doing everything right. So nice to read about a couple in a blended family who have each other's backs for once. Wishing you a very long and happy marriage and a happy, healthy family. Your in-laws can buzz off. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk? I quit while in the midst of moving my mother-in-law. It rained overnight and ruined everything I had left outside. Backstory. My mother-in-law lived 4 hours from our city. Last year, she decided to sell her house and move near my family. She recently closed on another house here as her house was under contract. My wife stayed home, overseeing some work being done on the new house while also painting. Myself and our daughter, who's 6, went down to my mother-in-law's house to get her moved out. My mother-in-law is the type of lady that exalts males on a glorified pedestal. Over the years, she's made numerous inappropriate remarks about my body build or my appearance. She even has gone as far as asking very personal questions. Nonetheless, her mouth has gotten her in major trouble. With that said, when we arrived, she seemed to have been minding her manners at first. She made a comment to my daughter along the lines of, when she gets older, she should marry a man just like her father. Later that night, we had an argument. My kid did not eat dinner because she had a stomach ache. My mother-in-law demanded she help clean the kitchen and said I should be relaxing instead. My argument was, why should she have to clean up from dinner when she didn't even eat? The next morning, my daughter slept in a bit, which irritated my mother-in-law. She made a comment that my wife is lazy, and that's where her granddaughter gets it from. It ticked me off, considering all of the work my wife has been doing at her new house. An hour later, my daughter got out of bed. I was outside when my mother-in-law was putting socks on her and said, "Don't you ever get too big like your mother." I didn't know about that comment until the next day. As they were packing boxes, I overheard my mother-in-law telling my daughter that her mother didn't even want to have her. For the record, that's not true. It was my mother-in-law that was hounding my wife to not have her because she said my wife would blow up even bigger and that having kids ruins lives. My kid was upset and hurt. My instinct was to get her away from that environment. We got lunch and I took her to the beach to distract her mind. We spoke it over. I promised her what her grandmother had said was not true. I called my wife. She and our kids spoke for a while. It was while they were on the phone, the comment about her not getting big like her mother was brought to my attention. We went back to the house, I gathered our belongings, and we left. Outside sat several pieces of furniture and a few large boxes. My mother-in-law tried hiring movers after we left, but none were available. Overnight it rained, which ruined everything. My brother-in-law called me a jerk for letting her furniture get ruined, also claimed it was mistreatment. Week later, I received a handwritten bill requesting $4,000 for the ruined furniture. My mother-in-law wrote how saddened she was to realize my wife had brainwashed and demasculinized me. The move occurred at the first of the year. Yesterday, I received an additional handwritten letter stating I will be sued if I do not pay for the damages. Not the jerk. That's wild. Your mother-in-law is a narcissist. Politely let her know you will deduct it from what she owes your wife and daughter, past and future, for therapy bills to deal with what she created by being awful. Also, she probably has homeowner's insurance. Iffy if that is coverable. Karen's stepdaughter demands I buy her a $60,000 car. I, 38 female, have a 16-year-old daughter. About 7 years ago, her dad and I divorced. Him being the only breadwinner and a high earner at that, and me being a housewife, he preferred to let us live in the house, a big one in a gated community, and continued paying all of our expenses and giving me spending money to maintain my lifestyle. 2 years later, I met my current husband. A year later, we married, and he moved in with me and my daughter. Him and my ex are great friends, especially since my ex is still very much a part of our life. Also, as a wedding gift, he gave me half of the house. Now I own it in full. My husband has a daughter with his ex. They have shared custody, and she lives with us half of the time. The problem is that my ex pays for our daughter to go to a really expensive private school, buys her expensive gifts, and for her birthday, he bought her a $60,000 car. My husband can't afford the same for his daughter. My daughter and her stepsister do not have the best relationship, mainly because my husband's ex hoped that they would be getting back together and keeps influencing her daughter. My daughter used to share her stuff until her stepsister started ruining them on purpose. That was when my husband made a rule that they can't borrow from each other. I stay out of it since she refuses to see me as a parent, and I won't force her. My husband has a good job, but nothing close as to what my ex earns, and since we both decided that this house is enough help from my ex, our income is just what he earns, which in my opinion is more than enough. Now my stepdaughter's 16th birthday is coming up, and she asked for the exact same car that my ex gave my daughter. We refused, of course, and said we would buy her a gift that fits our budget. She threw a tantrum and threatened my husband that she would never talk to him again if he didn't get her the same car. He is wavering, but I refuse. $60,000+ is just under what he makes a year. It will drown us in debt. We are still paying off his student loans and some medical debt he has. But on the other hand, he loves his daughter a lot, and I feel partly responsible since she wouldn't have asked for it if my daughter didn't get the car for her birthday. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your ex bought your daughter the car, right? So tell your stepdaughter that her mother can buy her a car to make it equal. You can't have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. These were the words my HR said to my manager when he put in my annual performance review for this past year. To explain a little background, I work in a niche part of research agriculture. I'm good at my job, I do it well, and everywhere I've went, I've made myself extremely hard to replace. Basically, I'm good at what I do and it reflects. My manager is very open with me. He is the most transparent manager I've ever had, and in fact, he shares with me certain details that I'm not supposed to know, such as salary raises, bonuses, stupid things that HR says to him in an email. After another great year of research and proving myself invaluable, which not only included 2 raises, 25% salary bump altogether, a hefty bonus, title promotion, enrolled in a mentoring program, listed as an extremely high performer by upper management, and being put in charge of advancing several field technology advancement projects, basically incorporating new cutting-edge tech in the field of research, all while attending college. Company was sending me back for free. I figured I had done amazing for the year. Reports were done and filed. Everything from safety to EHS to the I's being dotted and T's crossed was done. I could not have finished the year any better. Now this was the end of my second year at this job. During my first year review, I had been marked as a 5 all around by my manager. There's something like 4 categories you can score in, impressing not only him, but several of the upper management seat holders as well as the company VP. That's what led to my promotion and raises. This last annual review, my manager was having issues submitting my review. After some emails back and forth with HR, he explained to me that HR had just informed him that nobody can have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. Mark him as a 4 out of 5. This was the general synopsis of the email. So I did what I do best when I get petty. I asked my manager to forward me the email. Informed him that I was okay with the 4 out of 5 rating and that I don't expect him to try to fight HR on it. Then let the process stew for a few weeks. After the reviews were finished and sent back, they were accompanied with AVIP projections for the next year, salary increases and bonuses, and what do you know? My percentages were marked lower because I had gone from a 5 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5. Since the report made it seem that my performance had lacked this year from the last because of my score, even though my actual performance never suffered, I was put in a lower category of AVIP, meaning less money for me, which wasn't gonna fly. I put together all of the report, the email from HR, as well as the input from both my manager and my peers that are included in my review, and emailed it to my VP, Director of Marketing, and Director of R&D. With my manager and HR CC'd, I wrote, "This is fairly summarized. Due to the failure of the company to recognize my growth as an individual and mark me as slipping backwards on a progressional chart when it was obvious I had not, I will henceforth begin taking an only 80% or 4/5 of the current workload I have been assigned. I have been absolutely committed to the work and projects I have been assigned. In fact, getting my station ahead on audits, various projects, and coming under budget for the second year in a row seems to have been overlooked when due diligence was observed for my annual review. All due to the fact that an employee cannot be a 5 out of 5 twice in a row. I believe it to be absurd that this is how my performance is graded when I have had no complaints or issues from my peers, customers, or managers throughout the year. In fact, being told the opposite. I will look forward to my performance review next year to see how HR determines my new score." I sent this on a Friday at 4 p.m. right before I left. I got an email Sunday evening from my VP with HR CC'd stating that my review had been changed. Monday morning, I had my new AVIP projections in my inbox. Sometimes you gotta go to bat for yourself. Edit. To everyone asking, yes, I did get permission from my manager to use his email in my email. He had advocated for me in the past and is all for personal growth. He has been known to butt heads with some people in the past, but as far as I've seen, there's been no retaliation towards him. The rule was one made by our parent company. The parent company has several thousand employees, while the company I work for only has around 150 employees nationwide, including the management team. I don't remember the exact number, but it's small. Many of the policies are adopted from our parent company, but in this few, my VP decided to ignore the rule. And to those who are claiming my story is fictitious, you're free to feel that way, but nothing about my profile nor my comments would otherwise point to me making up stories for karma or praise. Also, if you're being walked over at work or treated badly, stand up for yourself, learn to sell yourself, and refuse to take mistreatment from employers. Employers who mistreat their staff are not worth your time or your mental health. You need to grade my test accurately. It's for a scholarship. I really try to be a positive and supportive, caring college instructor. My clientele are mostly college-age students enrolled in what is basically a pre-algebra course my community college likes to call college math. I have the occasional young whiz kid who enrolls in my course to be super advanced, but for the most part, young adults in their 20s and 30s are who I teach, and solving systems of equations by substitution is currently what I teach them. I have many students who struggle and require additional tutoring, and I'm always happy to oblige. There's this one student who I wish would show up to our makeshift tutoring group, but who never does. Let's call her Mara. Mara seriously acts like we're back in high school, interrupting my demonstrations. "Hey, OP, my dad says this isn't the way to solve it. Mr. OP, why don't you teach at ASU? Our partnering major university we transfer students to. What did you do wrong that you're teaching at this place?" The list goes on and on. We have an exam that about half the class got a 90 or better on, followed by most of the rest getting B's and C's, etc. I know that this community college, despite its cheap cost, still has many students on full scholarships for one thing or another, whether it be sports, personal hardships, activities, etc. That being said, if I notice a student tank the test, I may just grade the thing on a curve to allow them to get the most points possible. This is what I chose to do for Mara, and she wound up with an 18 out of 25 on her exam. I typed in the score and took a glance at her paper afterward and realized that she actually missed yet another question, a major one that would have brought her grade super low. I decided to look the other way, part laziness, part being nice. Let's not say how much each part is worth, but they're not equal. So it's time to return the test that I already had graded in the system when Mara starts up with her questions again. They are literally too tiresome to include. I will say her final piece, however. "Mr. OP, I noticed that you gave me an 18 out of 25 on my last test. Could I take a look at the test and see what I got wrong? I definitely didn't miss that much." I tried to use inflection to let her know that she should probably just be happy with the 18 by saying, "Yeah, I think I'd be happy with the 18 there, kiddo." Then she suddenly dropped a petty pebble on top of a snowy hill. She continues, this time standing, walking towards me and pointing her Cruella de Vil finger at me, saying, "No, you can't just put whatever you want for my grade. 18 out of 25 is not even possible. I need to keep my GPA high because of all my scholarships. You need to grade my test accurately." Enter pettylicious compliance. I knew good and well that she did not deserve, by any stretch of the imagination, anywhere near the 72 that 18 out of 25 got her. She didn't master 72% of the content. She didn't get 72% of the questions correct. I'll be honest and say that when I grade dozens of exams, I tend to look at the most important questions on each test and ensure these are 100% accurate. I always pepper in some spirally thinking type questions, stuff with rigor, but I don't grade against it. If I ever make an error in grading, it 150% of the time favors the student. I took her papers out of my case, file through the exams, and find her particular one, and look at it quizzically. Then I look back at her while my head is still positioned towards the paper. I'm trying so hard to give her an out, but she wouldn't budge. So I say, "You know what? You're right. I did make an error. Oh, crud. More than one." I then, behind my desk where the students couldn't see what I was looking at, graded her paper right then and there. By this time, I had memorized the answers to the exam without even needing to pull out the key, but I did so to show her that I was grading it thoroughly, accurately. She wound up with a 14 out of 25. I handed it back to her right then and there and let her know that I had changed the grade accordingly in her gradebook, that the 14 that she had just got turned her high C to a solid D. She looked through the exam, scouring through it like a madman. I also made sure I took a picture of the test before handing it back so she couldn't pull the "See, I made it negative, it's right" sort of thing. She's done that in the past. She quickly whipped out her phone to see how much this impacted her grade overall. She was livid without a direction to hurtle it towards. I could see that this act of petty malicious compliance on my part was a little too far. I actually felt bad for Mara. As she looked up at me, I could see her eyes well up a bit. It was that too quiet right before something bad was about to happen. My spidey senses were tingling. Before she started to take her clenched arms, that she looked like she was trying to remove the top of the desk from its connected chair and turn them on me, I offered a solution. "Look, Mara, remember, you can do the corrections on the exam for a fourth of the credit, okay? That will get you almost all of the points that you were gifted in the first place. What do you say?" She sheepishly agreed, wound up with a 17.5 out of 25, and has yet to give me a hard time since. but I'm pretty sure my semester survey will suffer greatly. Am I the jerk for moving out when my parents asked me to pay rent? I, 23, am the oldest of 5 siblings, and I'm a full-time student. I also have a part-time job in my field, but when I complete my after degree, my employer will take me on full-time. I make enough from part-time to pay for school and put money aside. My siblings range from 20 to 10. Both of our parents work full-time. I've taken on a lot of the responsibilities for keeping everything running around the house. I do the grocery shopping, the laundry, as well as making supper and doing meal prep so that everyone has lunches ready to take every day. I also get all of my siblings to do their part with regards to household chores. For example, my youngest brother is responsible for feeding and walking the dogs, so I make sure that there is dog food in the storage and bags on the leash. My dad works very long hours, and my mom works 9 to 5 at a hard job. Over Christmas, I had a chance to buy a PS5 for myself, so I did. The rest of my family is still using a shared PS4. I keep mine in my room, and I do not share it. My parents started fielding complaints from my oldest brother about how I made so much money and I don't share the things I buy for myself. Totally true. So they had a talk with me where they brought this up. I pointed out how much of the household work I did, and they said it wasn't fair that I was earning so much money without contributing. They told me how much they expected from me. I went to my room and I did the math. If I gave them what they wanted, I would have about $800 a month left over. If I dropped a couple of classes next semester, I could go to almost full-time hours with my employer, and it would only be 1 more year until I graduated with my second degree. But I could afford my own place, and I would have way more free time and disposable income. I packed up and moved out. Everything I owned fit in my car. I stayed at an Airbnb for 2 weeks until I could get everything sorted with an apartment, school, and work. It was great. I'm not going to lie. I may have gone a little overboard on Tinder. I couldn't have anyone over when I lived with my parents. I just moved into my own apartment. I'm staying part-time until I finish this semester. I'll work full-time over this summer and go to a lighter class load and higher work hours in the fall. My oldest brother has been tasked by my parents to do everything I used to do. His chores have been split up with the other 3. They're all upset with me for moving out. My parents are upset that I left them in the lurch. My siblings are mad that they all have more chores. My oldest brother is especially salty because he has no free time to see his girlfriend and she isn't allowed in the house when my parents aren't home. I'm enjoying my free time. I bought myself a plant from IKEA. I feel bad for doing them all over, but it didn't make sense for me to do all of that work and pay rent on top. Edit. All the chores were split fairly. I wasn't doing any more than anyone else. I thought it was fair until I was asked to put in money as well. Not the jerk. If you left them in the lurch, that should be a flashing sign of how much you were contributing. I was ready to call you the jerk, but you're carrying the entire mental load of the household. You shouldn't be expected to share the money you earn. I bet your oldest brother is regretting making such a fuss about you buying yourself a PS5 with your own money. He started all of this. I know that all parents are different and have different plans on how they can or want to support their kids. Some start rent right at 18 or high school graduation. Some pay for all expenses through college. Many of us are somewhere in between. It doesn't sound like your parents told you in advance that rent would start at a certain age, which I think is unfair. It sounds more like they just wanted to confiscate part of your income so your siblings wouldn't be as jealous. When they introduced the idea of rent, I would have introduced the concept of decreased chores. Someone renting a room would traditionally not have assigned chores and childcare. They would just tidy up after themselves. Parents often initiate conversations about rent to inspire young adults or older offspring to move out. Even when that wasn't the parents' intent, the rent talk often inspires the offspring to do a cost and benefit analysis and decide to move out. That's what happened here. It certainly doesn't make you a jerk. Not the jerk. Your parents aren't jerks for bringing up the subject, but they definitely are for trying to guilt trip you after you made the best choice for you to move out. Good for you. Just desserts. For many years, I worked at a Pizza Hut. I have a million stories, and while many are malicious, only a few contain much compliance. At this time, I was a dish dude / phone answer / whatever needed to be done. I was persistently amused by how quickly even the most trivial amount of power could go to people's heads. One waitress, who I'll call Donna, and then never use that name again in this whole story, was given some sort of title, like Grand Overlord of Waitstaff or something, which conferred upon her the power to do the same job as before, but with more work. She wasn't actual management, Not that I would have cared much if she was. I showed up early every day, as was my habit, and one evening I was somewhere in the back wandering about, 20 minutes before my shift. The phones were ringing and being ignored by just about everyone as usual, so the team lead of waitstaff ordered me to answer it. If she had asked, I would have done it, as I had done 1,000 times before, but this was a decree from on high. I informed her that my shift didn't start for a while yet, but this detail failed to impress. I said I would have to clock in before I could use the order-taking computerizing thingy, and my manager would have to approve me doing that. They were oddly strict about that for a restaurant. She said she was a manager and to just do it, but I didn't. So she swiped her card into the magic order screen and yelled politely to just take the phone order. Under her card, her name off the clock. Okay. Humbled by my public defeat, I meekly picked up the phone and proceeded to thank the caller for choosing, etc., and took the order. As I did so, I added 7 Bigfoot pizzas with extra whatever and a dozen bottles of beer for delivery and a couple of dessert pizzas. I told them their total before all of the added nonsense, and the call ended. The thing is, we had stopped selling Bigfoot pizzas a few years before. We hadn't carried dessert pizzas since the mid-15th century, but they were still in the system, and we did not deliver beer, as doing so could be illegal. The cooks were confused, the actual managers were confused, and questions were being asked. Anyhow, I went outside for a smoke. The Royal Duchess of Waitressing came storming out the back door a bit later and said a bunch of words or something, then went back in. As I learned later, after clocking in, she had to get the help of an actual manager to delete all of that stuff and change the total, which messes up their numbers or something. I don't really know why, but they sure didn't like deleting things. And she had to tell them that she had me use her swipey name thing to take the order because I was off the clock, and they really did not care for that at all. Right in front of the assistant manager, she threatened to write me up, which she did not have the authority to do. No customers were harmed in the making of this compliance, since they got the actual stuff they ordered, and there was no wastage since no one could make a Bigfoot or dessert pizza if they had wanted to. Just a bit of extra paperwork and a very annoyed wait queen. Am I the jerk for sleeping the whole evening away when my girlfriend's family came to visit? I think the title is self-explanatory. My girlfriend's family are quite upset with me, but let me give you a bit of background. I, 25 female, am currently a resident. My specialty is a particularly demanding one. I have 24-hour shifts every other day, and I get to go on 72-hour shifts at the hospital with only a few hours of sleep 4 times a month. I've been dating my girlfriend, who's 23, for 2 years. Her parents and brother, who's 29, live in a different city. They were going to come visit us for a few days. My girlfriend had told me beforehand. She obviously knows my schedule. I offered to help her before her parents got here. I only managed to get a few items, gifts, etc. Later, she told me to carry on with my routine and said that she'd handle the hosting duties. I had one of those 72-hour nightmare shifts. We had countless admissions and only got to sleep very occasionally. It's safe to say I was almost a zombie by the time I got home. After I got home, I took a shower and told my girlfriend I was going to sleep for a bit. I set an alarm to get up and help my girlfriend in the kitchen, watch a movie or something. I slept through the whole day and got up around 10 p.m. When I went downstairs, I saw my girlfriend's parents and her brother. I had completely forgotten about my girlfriend's family coming over later that day. They had a very unimpressed look. My girlfriend's mother told me it was extremely disrespectful of me to not have been there to welcome them the first time that they were coming over to visit. I got similar comments from all of them. My girlfriend said she purposely didn't wake me up because I was going to go back to the hospital in a few hours and I needed my sleep. Her family didn't change their minds. Her brother later told me, privately, that I was neglecting my girlfriend and being selfish in this relationship. He said his sister deserved much better than someone who wouldn't even acknowledge her family. I feel horribly about all this. I asked a few friends, but they're all terrible when it comes to these kinds of advice. I honestly don't know. Am I the jerk? Edit. I was allowed to leave the hospital around 2 p.m., got home around 3 p.m., took a shower, and went to sleep at 3:30. I set an alarm for 6 p.m., but I slept through it. They arrived at about 5. Not the jerk. It's not like you were out partying. You're a medical resident. You'd have to live under a really heavy rock to not know they get the worst shifts and any downtime is taken over by exhaustion. Your girlfriend wasn't offended and completely understood. Let her deal with her judgmental family. You just try to survive residency. Not the jerk. I can't believe the family doesn't understand your schedule. If you don't get enough sleep, your patients could suffer from bad health care. The only opinion that counts is your girlfriend's. If she's cool with it, don't worry about her family. Not the jerk. Almost went with no jerks here. I mean, it is kind of expected to be present when your partner's family is visiting, so I get that they were confused and a little upset. But it was an honest mistake on your side, and your girlfriend chose to not wake you up, and also told her family why you were absent. They should have let this go after your girlfriend explained the situation. Entitled mother tried to steal my tablet, so I went from 0 to 100 to make her back off. I, 33, male, am an ELA teacher based in China for the last 3.5 years. First, a little bit of information before I get to the story. There is a bit of a pay gap between foreign and Chinese teachers. It's also a well-known fact that only the most opportunistic ones like to capitalize on it from time to time, if you're not careful. It can be anything from charging more at stands to, on the rarest of occasions, guilting them into complying. Trust me, it's happened, and those select few are not apologetic about it. Now, on to the story. It was Chinese New Year, and I was on the train to Chongqing to visit a friend. I don't like flying, and I really like trains. I had my Samsung tablet with me, and I was watching Final Fantasy VII with my Bluetooth. Suddenly, I felt something nudging against me. I looked to see a kid, maybe in elementary, trying to look at the movie. So I turned off my Bluetooth and I turned the tablet to him so that he can watch it. Sounds weird, but being a teacher here, you get used to it. Anyway, he was really immersed and, though I couldn't understand him, I could tell that he was really enjoying it a lot. He was trying to talk to me, but his English wasn't so good and my Chinese was worse. So he opted for, "I like this, so cool, me too," and things like that. Very basic English. He was a sweet kid and he got to watch the whole thing before our stop. He even said, "Chongqing," and I said, "Me too." He waved goodbye and ran back to his mom, and I began to pack my things so I could get off. Then it happened. A woman approached me with the kid and, in perfect English, demanded my tablet. She literally said, "Give me your tablet." I thought I was in the Twilight Zone and wanted to ensure that I had heard her correctly. "Excuse me?" "Give me your tablet. I want my son to have it." I refused, a simple no, and she said those magic words that I'd begun hating to hear. "But you're a foreigner. You can just buy another one." Now, a couple of things. One, I don't know if the kid really wanted my tablet or not, and frankly, I didn't care. Two, I come from a family that has taught me to never let anyone make you feel less than others. If someone tries to take my dignity, it's not going to end well for that person. And no, I don't actually have to fight to get my point across. Fair warning, I'm paraphrasing the confrontation because it lasted a lot longer than I cared for. I said, "No, I can't. I had to save to buy this. You can do the same." "No, you can give us yours and stop being selfish." Again, I countered. "Or you can stop being an entitled jerk and buy your own." It was my first time seeing a shocked Pikachu face, and to rub salt in the wound, I added, "Shoo, shoo." She did go away, only to come back with the police. That I should have seen coming, but I didn't because I was focused on getting off the train. Lucky for me, he also spoke English with great fluently. He was also really polite and obviously not in the mood for any of it. "Sir, this woman says you stole her tablet." I saw the woman behind him with a triumphant smirk while speaking Chinese. I let out a sigh. I had already wasted enough time on this nonsense, so I did what I always did when I wanted to get my point across in the quickest way possible. I turned cold. In fact, my students referred to it as me turning into being Laoshi, ice teacher. I looked at the police officer and said, "I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to use my fingerprint to unlock this tablet. If it doesn't work, she can have it. If it does work, I get my revenge on her." That woman's Pikachu face came back so fast that the officer even had a shocked look. He asked me if I was serious, and I said, "Definitely." I guess the woman saw my face and tried to backpedal, but I wasn't going to let her go until I made my point. When she tried to leave, I said, "Where are you going? I thought you said this was yours." The woman looked to the police for help, but as I said, he was not in the mood and just spoke as she was. She said something in Chinese to the man, only for the man to give a short reply. I guess he wasn't going to entertain this after all. "How dare you? You had the nerve to try to take something that's mine because I'm a foreigner. You're disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself." The woman had a mixture of fear, shock, and anger on her face when I finally asked, "Is this your tablet?" When the woman said no, I leaned my head in towards her and barked, "What was that?" She finally said that the tablet was mine before taking her kid and leaving. The kid did wave goodbye to me despite his mother's objections, and I smiled and waved back. The officer asked me if I was serious about what I wanted to do, and I told him the truth. I would never have done something like that. He laughed and wished me a happy Chinese New Year. I told my friend about this, and we had a good laugh. My mom stole my college fund. Now I'm suing her. Backstory. My parents got divorced when I was around 11. Around the same time, my mom was in a car accident and had won a fairly large settlement on top of my grandpa passing in the middle of it, so she was left with a fairly large chunk of money. During their divorce, my mom constantly kept me and my siblings in the loop of everything and made my dad look like he was the villain in the situation, despite my mom's cheating being the reason for their separation. And when you're young, you want to believe your parents have your best interests at heart. My dad paid over $300 weekly in child support for my siblings and I, and when I decided at 20 I wanted to move in with my dad, she stopped talking to me for a while since she would fully lose all child support. Part of the divorce agreement was that my dad would not ask for any of the money from the settlement as long as $40,000 of it went into a college fund for me, since at the time my siblings had no interest in pursuing college. Everything was arranged, the divorce papers were signed, and my mom gloated about how much money I would have for school. And on top of that, my siblings and I had $10,000 each as an inheritance from my grandfather's will for us to use when we turned 18. A few years later, she had fully renovated my grandfather's house that we moved into. We had a new car, went on a 7-night Disney cruise, followed by a stay at a deluxe Disney hotel. We were fairly happy, and I was a sophomore in high school, excited to start looking at colleges, when my mom informed me that she spent my entire college fund and inheritance on everything above. I was floored. The first thing I had done was tell my dad, who became so angry he immediately contacted his own lawyer and took my mom back to court to figure out a way to make that money back. At this point, we lived paycheck to paycheck and heavily relied on the child support to afford a living. So she was served the court papers and they went in front of a judge, where my mom was given a slap on the wrist since it was determined she didn't make enough money to pay back the $40,000 college fund. Throughout my entire childhood, my mom was mistreating towards me and my siblings. She manipulated us to be at each other's throats constantly, and she was very narcissistic. She continued to get worse during my childhood, and my anxiety and depression was crippling. It took moving to a different state to realize how harmful she was in my childhood and to see clearly how much she messed me up, and I went no contact almost a year ago. My dad is about to retire and made it known to me that according to his divorce agreement, my mom gets a good chunk of his pension, which got my gears turning. Would I be able to take my mom to court over the college fund again, but this time to try to use his pension to replenish my funds? Even if that means I'm doing her out of $1,000 plus a month for my dad's work. Not the jerk, but I don't know if this will work. Technically speaking, since she violated the divorce agreement, things should be brought to court to be rediscussed. Since she will now be getting $1,000 extra per month, she will have the money to pay back the $40,000 college fund, but I don't know how these things work. Not the jerk. Parents that spend money that isn't theirs like your mother did disgusts me. It would have been different if you or one of your siblings had a medical emergency that required funds, but that's not the case here. HOA Karen got my car towed. Worst mistake she ever made. Years ago, I owned a big Mercedes. It was an 83 300 SD. It had upwards of 860,000 miles on it. I bought it from my father for $1, but actually only gave him 99 pennies a couple years after he bought it from his uncle. It was a massive car that was fun to drive. Like old turbo diesels often do, the turbo went out. The car still ran just fine, but it was more than sluggish going up hills. Living in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains made this an issue. The cost to repair was like $800. I needed about 6 weeks to be able to afford the repair. No big deal. I'll just park it on the condo parking pad about 50 yards from my condo, save up the money, then get it fixed. Then one day I come home and my car is gone. I'm not distraught, but incredibly upset. I call the police, and a nice officer comes to take a report about my stolen car. A week or so goes by, and I receive a phone call. Alas, my car has not been stolen, it has been towed. I make my way up to the tow yard and ask the dude in the building, what the heck? And he proceeds to tell me that an HOA member named Diane called and said it was improperly parked, against their rules, and had it towed according to their policies and signage. I paid him $550, which was the cost of the storage for over a week and the hookup charge, then drive my car back home. In the process of towing my car, the winch cable put a dent in my front bumper because the car was so long and heavy. I get home to call the landlord and ask about the CC&Rs. She sends them to me, and there is nothing in there about the length of parking, only abandoned vehicles. The car was operable and had a valid tag and 4 tires full of air. It was obviously not abandoned. At this point, I began my research. I had the CC&Rs already and knew I was good there. Georgia law states that parking enforcement signs must be 4 feet above grade, which this neighborhood's signs were 3 feet. I found the names of each board member and the property management company. Diane was not listed as a board member. Interesting. I sued. I sued everyone. I sued the driver of the tow truck and the tow company for damaging my vehicle. I sued each and every HOA board member individually for towing my car improperly. I sued my landlord, just in case she needed to be named as well. I sued the property management company since they work for the HOA. I filed a subpoena for any and all records related to towing my car from the tow company. Lucky for me, they actually recorded their phone calls, and I had that phone call recording. I subpoenaed HOA board members for the past 10 years, and Diane was never a board member in the minutes. Finally, I sued Diane. I sued her for the cost of recovering my vehicle. Georgia has a provision in state law that allows for treble damages when a defendant acts with willful misconduct or fraud. I spent roughly 6 hours researching my case and decided to pay myself $100 an hour, which I felt was fair, as an attorney would have charged at least twice that. I amended my complaint to ask for treble damages against Diane. Court day. Before the case is heard, the judge dismisses the case against my landlord, as she had nothing to do with this. He dismisses the case against the tow truck driver, as he was acting as an agent of the company already named. He also dismisses the case against each board member, as they had no part in this at all. I was prepared for and expected these dismissals. It's better to sue everyone remotely involved and have their cases dismissed than to lose because you didn't name the right person. It's my time to shine, and I'm ready. I enter into evidence the state code that regulates signage, then submit my evidence that the signage did not follow the state law. This is my case against the property management company. The judge asks the property management company to respond, and they admit fault. I move for a directed verdict against the property manager for the cost of the hookup. Judge awards me $75 for the tow hookup fee and my $50 court filing fee from the property management company. Next, I enter into evidence the damage to my bumper. I also submit estimates from a Mercedes dealership to repair the bumper. Tow company says, "Yeah, that's our bad. We'll pay it." I'm then awarded $1,200 from them. Next is my case against Diane. I call the guy in the shack at the tow yard who testifies that I drove my car home that day. I enter into evidence the phone call she made to have my car towed, and he testifies to its authenticity. Diane has no clue what's happening, so she doesn't cross-examine him. I call the property manager, who is still in the courtroom, to testify that Diane is not and has never been a board member. She's still befuddled. I submit into evidence my current registration, showing the tag is valid, and a picture of my car in the courthouse parking lot, showing I drove it there that day. I sum up by telling the judge that Diane acted with willful misconduct by calling to have my car towed when it didn't violate any of the CC&Rs. Then I argue that she acted fraudulently by claiming to have authority as a board member to have it towed. I explain that by acting with willful misconduct and fraud, I am entitled to treble damages. I'm not exactly sure what a response was because I was having trouble hearing since I was so excited at having just owned Diane in open court. The judge awarded me $1,075 from Diane, $475 for the money I paid for the storage to the tow yard, plus the $600 in work I put in. Then he hit her with the treble damages. Now she owes me $3,225. 30 days later, my excitement has subsided, but she hasn't paid. I file notice with the court. 30 days after that, still no money. I go to the marshal's office with my judgment, and they tell me to find her bank accounts and come back. 30 days later, I go back to court and file and receive a garnishment order. Paid a private investigator $150 and we find her bank account. Back to the marshal's office, and we go to Bank of America and clean out her checking and savings accounts. I'm short like $1,500 though. Went back to Bank of America a couple months later and she had closed her account. Paid the same private investigator again and found an account at SunTrust. Then went into that bank and took $1,250. I left $250 on my judgment out of spite. I used that $250 judgment against Diane to file a lien against her home. I left it there to mess with her, so she would always remember me when she tried to refinance or sell her home. I never did collect that $250, and the lien was released after 10 years. That was fine with me. I felt she had been punished enough. That jerk. I did wind up fixing the car though. Drove great after that. Update. My annoying sister demands we eat dinner together as a family. I, 42, am the eldest of 8 siblings. This concerns my youngest sister, Elena, who's 23. Me and my husband have 2 kids, who are 16 and 13. Elena's staying with us for 4 months because she started at a new college and she needs some time to sort out housing. She's been here for a couple of weeks so far. Last night, she made dinner for everyone. She said that she wanted to. The way dinner usually works in my household is I dish up the food, then my kids take it up to their rooms to eat. We obviously have family dinner too, but this is just more convenient for all of us as we don't have to spend time setting the table every day, and we can eat at different times if needed. Also, by different times, I don't mean someone eats at 7 p.m. and someone else eats at 3 a.m., just a small gap. I know this isn't for everyone, and that's okay, but this is what works for our family. Elena knows this. So last night she made fried dumplings, orange chicken, fried rice, and chocolate cake for dessert. I went into the kitchen to thank her and I saw her setting the table. I told Elena that she doesn't need to do that and we'll take food from the pot. My 13-year-old started saying she was hungry, so I went to go get food since everything was done. But Elena stopped me and said to wait a few minutes and we'll eat together. Again, I told her that's not really how it works around here. One of my kids is hungry now, but my 16-year-old usually eats a bit later. Elena then said she was going to serve the dumplings first, then chicken and rice and cake after. I repeated to her, again, we can get the main food at once, cake later, and if anyone wants seconds, we'll come and get it. It's fine, no need to set the table. She looked upset and said she wants to have a nice dinner together and involve the kids. I had enough at this point, so I told her I know my kids and my family. She doesn't get to dictate what we do in my home. My husband saw what was going on and told Elena thanks, but we know how to serve ourselves. Elena eventually understood, but she was acting sulky and giving me the cold shoulder this morning. Am I the jerk? Update. It's pretty early in the morning, but I'm up and wanted to post an update. Couldn't reply to all the comments, but I'll cover some questions people were asking here. Firstly, thanks to the comments who were kind and tried to understand both mine and Elena's side, and I can see we had some communication issues. 1. I knew even before I posted, a lot of people would gloss over the question I was even asking and immediately jump on, we have our dinner separately. As I mentioned, I know this doesn't work for everyone. That's fine. This is what works for us. I don't neglect my kids. They're happy, healthy teens. 2. A lot of comments about what we do at restaurants. We eat at restaurants how everyone eats at restaurants. My home is not a restaurant, so we eat here how we eat at home. 3. Some comments saying Elena wanted to make dinner because she was feeling lonely and we made her feel lonelier. No, she said she wanted to make a meal because she had some news to share. I never ask her to make food, do any chores, etc. She's free to do as she wishes. I did have a chat with Elena that we appreciated the meal, but she's been here for a few weeks already and knows very well what our eating routine is like. I did apologize for a misunderstanding on my part, but having dinner exactly the way she wants isn't the only form of appreciation. We all told her the food was delicious because it was, and that should be enough. She seemed to understand and said okay, but was still a little quiet around us, so I think I'll let her cool off for a bit. You're the jerk. Your sister made a 3-course meal and wanted to eat together. Would it be such a big deal to break the disjointed mealtime tradition just once? Tell her I'll sit at the table and eat all of that. Your sister made a 3-course meal and wanted to eat together. Based on the fact that the sister pays rent and utilities, according to your comments, I see this as her inviting the family to a dinner party in the place the sister lives in, more than trying to make rules for family dinner. OP, how would you feel if you invited someone over for a dinner party, they arrived at random times, took the food, and went home, without socializing over the multi-course meal that you want to serve as multiple courses? I know that I would feel extremely offended. I have hosted such parties before, as have friends of mine. ETA. OP confirms that Elena, her sister, asked and made plans 3 days in advance to organize the dinner party. You're the jerk. This was her way of showing appreciation to you and your family, and you kinda threw it back in her face. Also, you're teaching your kids some really bad habits with eating. They'll carry this behavior on, and that will cause issues for them in the future with most outside your walls. Family mealtimes are an important part of growing up and understanding social situations. You're the jerk. You and your husband. You're completely ungrateful for what your sister was trying to do for you, and I expect she was greatly upset. Are you always so insensitive? Sounds to me that the dinner arrangements your sister made is exactly what you lot need. Do you all hate being together so much that you can't cope with having even one meal together? This has to be one of the more pathetic Am I the Jerk posts I've read in a while. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. Orange chicken, fried rice, chocolate cake? Sign me up. Am I the jerk for telling a girl to stop wasting food? I, 21 female, usually always sit with the same group of people in my university's dining area. There's this girl who I've talked to a few times, but I'm not really friends with her. She's kind of quiet, but when she finally talks, she seems normal. I've sat across from her a few times, and I noticed how she was eating because it was weird to me. She eats maybe half of her food. Keep in mind, you control the amount of food. It's cooked by the cafeteria staff buffet style. She could easily take less, and kind of plays with it with her fork when she's done, aka eating half of it, sometimes even less. I didn't say anything for a while, but a few weeks ago, I had to ask her why she always only ate half of her food. She seemed a little embarrassed, but answered that she thought she was more hungry and laughed it off. I then asked why she had made this mistake every time we ate, and that she must have learned by now. She didn't really answer. I don't actually remember, but it wasn't actually an explanation, and left pretty quickly. She doesn't really show up that much anymore, but when she does, she still eats like this, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her once again, and also asked her if her parents never told her not to play with her food. It was a genuine question. Some people are raised in households where manners aren't important, but obviously they are for most people. She got really mad at me and told me to stop commenting on her eating habits and that it was none of my business. I told her that it absolutely was, since she was sitting at our table and obviously wasting food. She told me to go forget myself and left and threw out the rest of her food again. After she left, one of my friends told me to leave her alone as she seemed like she was having a hard time and maybe had some kind of an issue with food. Yeah, obviously she has an issue with food. She keeps wasting it. She hasn't shown up again. I'm assuming she buys her own food now, which might teach her to not waste it, so that's good. The same friend who told me to leave her alone keeps pestering me to apologize to her, but I think that she should apologize to me. She's unnecessarily rude when being asked the most basic and obvious questions and also told me to go forget myself. That's way more harsh than anything I ever told her. Keep in mind that I care a lot about food waste and the environment. Am I the jerk for telling a girl to stop wasting her food? Edit. Okay, I'm the jerk. Sorry I'm not studying to be an eating disorder specialist. I looked up stuff about it and I'm realizing I was too harsh. I'll apologize the next time I see her and try not to be so condescending. But you should all follow your own advice. If people genuinely don't know something, you should tell them nicely instead. And I realize I should have tried to educate her nicely about food waste and not have commented at all on how she was eating. You're the jerk. It was hard to even read this whole thing. Why are you so concerned what a stranger is doing in the cafeteria? As much as I hate seeing wasted food, what do you think is happening to all the food that isn't ate that's cooked at your school? It goes to waste. Same thing happens at a lot of fast food chains and restaurants. The fact that you really kind of don't understand how awkward and embarrassing it is that you felt confident enough to walk up to someone and ask why they don't eat all their food is odd to me. What if she always thinks she's able to eat more than she actually is able to? Thinks the dish is going to be good, but then after a few bites decides it's not. Who are you really to say? The fact that you feel entitled to an answer to the question is also odd to me. As the sort of person that you clearly don't like, you're the jerk. Sometimes you just think you're hungrier than you are. It happens. But from a different perspective, wow, what's wrong with you? When I was in college, I had disordered eating. If people talked about food while I ate, especially if it was a comment about what I was eating, I wouldn't be able to finish my plate. The thought of it would make me sick. I couldn't force myself to continue eating. Seriously, it's none of your business to comment on her eating habits. You're the rude one. Also, if it actually concerned you, there were better, more empathetic ways to go about voicing your concerns. My boyfriend ruined the one day a month I get to spend with my son. My son is 12 and we are very close. We always spend one day a month together. The day is always the same. We wake up slightly later than usual, have a pancake breakfast, hang out in the rink for a couple of hours, head to the arcade to try the claw machines, then eat dinner at this Indian restaurant before heading home and watching a movie with dessert. It's important to us, and we always do everything I mentioned. We've been doing it this way since he was 5. I always let him and my boyfriend know the date a week prior. On the morning of the day, my boyfriend decided to clean the kitchen and threw out the pancake mix. He then forgot to fill up the gas in my car, so we had to go to the gas station, but it took forever because of traffic. Then, when we finally got to the rink, he called me about 20 times to ask where something is or to discuss something about his daughter. We had to leave quickly so that the restaurant wouldn't close, so we skipped the arcade. When we were halfway through eating, my boyfriend called and said that he had hurt himself. We packed up the food and rushed home, only to find out that he had hit his ankle against something but was okay otherwise. He then refused to let us watch the movie because he was watching something, and he started eating the food that we brought. My son called him a jerk before stomping up to his room. I was just in shock. My boyfriend's never done this before, and I really couldn't tell if he was being oblivious or if he was doing this on purpose. Boyfriend was like, "You just gonna let that slide?" I rolled my eyes at him before saying, "Enjoy the food." I then went to our room. He followed after me, asking what my problem was. I told him that he knows how important this day is, and he got upset and was like, "Is that what this is about? I'm important too, you know." I kind of snapped and told him that he isn't as important as my son and that he had ruined our day by acting like a kid. He went quiet, said that I'm being a jerk, then left. He won't answer any of my calls, but texted my son saying that he expects an apology. It's 5 a.m. and I haven't been able to sleep. Am I the jerk here? Please be honest. I need to know if I was really being a jerk and if I overreacted or something. Edit. We're in our 30s, but he's a couple years older than me. His daughter is 20 and has her own mom. We've been together for 4 years, and we go on date nights every 2 or so weeks, but I don't have boyfriend-only days like I do with my son. Also, don't worry, my son will not be apologizing, and I've reassured him that he has nothing to be sorry for. Not the jerk. All of this is super weird. He decides to clean the kitchen the morning of and just happens to throw away your pancake mix? You mentioned he's never done this previously, and he knows the date a week prior, which means he knows the routine, so he purposefully set up for a disaster of a day. The only thing I might give him a pass on is not filling the car with gas. But seriously, how many red flags do you need? He was an absolute jerk, and yet he's the one acting like he's been wronged and calling you names and texting your 12-year-old that he better apologize? If it were me, he'd be lucky if I let him back in the house to pack up his stuff instead of throwing it all in the garbage bags and leaving it outside with changed locks. Not the jerk. Oh, is that what this is about? Is the tell that he knew what he was doing and did it on purpose, and he has absolutely no right to text your kid demanding an apology. Lose the boyfriend and block his number from your son's phone. The fact that he couldn't get what he wanted out of you, so he went to your son, is a major red flag. Not the jerk. He did it on purpose because he's either jealous he doesn't get to go or he doesn't like you spending the day without him. One day a month with your son isn't too much to ask. Your son honestly only spoke the truth. I wouldn't punish him, but if you see the need for a simple "don't call people names" would suffice. I hope you can make the day up for your son, and next time, don't answer his calls. Am I the jerk for holding a grudge against my brother for stealing money from me 16 years ago? I, female 33, have one sibling, an older brother, Dan, who's 36. Dan and I never had a close relationship, even when we were kids. I can't exactly pinpoint why, but it just was the way it was. Our mom was a single mother, and our dad was in prison serving a long sentence and only got out when I was 17 and Dan was 20. When we were kids, our mom was working 2 jobs as a housekeeper and as a school lunch lady to make ends meet. We were really broke. As soon as I turned 16, I got a job working in retail to contribute to the household and hopefully save up for university. I was starting to save up quite a sizable amount of money after a year. And that same year, Dan got one of his coworkers pregnant. Shortly after she gave birth, she was hospitalized multiple times with postpartum psychosis and eventually lost all custody of the baby. Dan took custody, and so it was me, our mom, Dan, and the baby in a 2-bedroom flat. It was feeling a bit crowded and cluttered, and Dan vented to me many times about how he needs to get his own place. Dan was really struggling for money. He was working a minimum wage job, and he had all the baby expenses to worry about. When I was 17, Dan stole my debit card and bank details and withdrew all of my savings, which was around 2,000 pounds. He put my debit card back in my wallet and then left the house with the baby and moved in with his new girlfriend. I felt so betrayed that he would just take something that I worked so hard for. My mom told me I was forbidden from going to the police about it and told me to just let it go as Dan is struggling and needed it. When I was old enough to go to university, my dad gave me money to go towards my expenses. I hadn't spoken to Dan since that day, and Dan never attempted to speak to me either. Last week, my mom tried to sneakily get me and Dan to meet up under the guise that we were just getting a normal dinner at a restaurant and he was in on it. I told them that I don't want to see Dan. Dan told me I need to grow up and I can't hold a grudge over this forever. It was such a long time ago and he was young and desperate and he's still my brother. He said it's only money and I shouldn't be so materialistic. I told him it's the principle of it, that I'm his little sister and he stole something significant from me. He said I'm being dramatic about the situation and that he was in a rough patch and surely I could understand why he did it. No one in the family is on my side here except my dad, and I'm wondering if I really am being so wrong and so cold-hearted. Not the jerk. He said it's only money? Then he'll have no problem paying it back. Look, it's not just money. He broke your trust. He was an adult with a job, living at his mom's, in a home where everyone worked. Yet he decided to steal from his little sister just so he could go live with his new girl? You aren't cold-hearted. He wasn't at risk of ending up under a bridge with his baby, even if he wants to make it sound like it. He didn't have a conversation with you. He didn't set a plan to give it back little by little. No, he decided he had a right to your money and to gamble with your future. He couldn't know if your parents would pay for your education, then told you to get over it. I tell him to pay you back your money, adjusted for inflation and interest, and then you'll consider getting over it. Not the jerk. Has he ever apologized? Or is it just, I needed it and you'll have to get over it? He stole from you, and it's not like it was 10 pounds from your piggy bank. From what you've said, there seems to be a complete lack of acknowledgement that he was in the wrong. Your bank account was not a slush fund for him to get himself out of a difficult situation. What's to stop him from doing something similar again? At the very least, he owes you an apology. He also owes you 2,000 pounds, ideally plus interest or inflation. Your mom is a huge jerk too for enabling him and taking his side. At this point, do whatever makes you feel better, or what makes you feel least bad. You owe them nothing. Am I the jerk for wasting money on a bathroom and not helping my brother? My 10th anniversary is coming up, and my kids are getting old enough to be a pain in the butt regarding our single bathroom. I've been saving up, and for my 10th anniversary, I'm getting a bathroom installed in the basement. I'm going all out. Well, as far out as I can afford to. I'm getting a 2-person tub with jets, in-floor heating, and a heat lamp so my wife can dry off and stay warm. Anyways, the issue is that my brother is having money problems. He called me and asked if I could spare any money to help him out. He has a tendency to live far beyond his means. We have similar jobs and salaries, but he has a huge house with 3.5 bathrooms. He drives a $150,000 truck that he will never use to tow, haul, or go off-road with. His wife's engagement ring cost as much as my motorcycle. My family lives in a bungalow my wife and I bought. It was built in 1956 and it's cozy for us and 2 kids. But my mom constantly compares our lifestyles. She loves showing people pictures of his Christmas decorations and stuff, and she shares his vacation pictures, that sort of thing. The bathroom budget is $25,000, but it will probably go higher when the contractor starts working. My mom is backing him up. She says that I don't spend any money, so I should have some saved to help out family. She's saying he might have to sell his truck or downsize his home. I told her that's not really my problem. He makes a little more than I do a year, so he should have savings too. She said that he needs to have a big house so that he can entertain since he wants to climb the corporate ladder. That might just be my interpretation. I don't want to lend him money and watch him waste it and disappoint my wife. She deserves a bathroom where she can take long baths without the kids or me interrupting to use it. I could cut corners and lend him some money, but I really don't want to do that, even if it means he has to sell his stuff. Could be the fact that I desperately want a second bathroom myself, but not the jerk. All the reasons you cited are additional points why you're not the jerk, but ultimately, even without any mitigating factors, your savings are yours and you don't owe anyone a loan or a gift, since it sounds unlikely he'd be able to pay you back. Not the jerk. Downsizing his truck isn't the same as needing food to live because something unexpected happened. Get the bathroom. It's quality of life. Not the jerk. Don't you dare lend him a dime, especially if he's living beyond his means. Sorry, not sorry. Enjoy your new bathroom. The worst party I've ever worked in 30 plus years of doing this. This took place a few years ago. I was working as banquet captain at a fine dining restaurant that also does events in Orange County. The event was a large wedding. I'm not going to describe the people in attendance, but I will say that they were not the kind of people that could really afford to eat at the restaurant regularly. From the very beginning of the event, there were problems. One of the first people to arrive was the DJ. He seemed nice enough, and he told me he was the cousin of the bride, and he was doing the gig as a favor. That wasn't the problem. The problem started when another guy showed up with his equipment and thought that he was going to be the DJ. When I saw him roll in with his stuff, I immediately started asking him what he was doing, because I remembered him from the other events. It turns out the bride had already booked him months in advance, and he had a signed contract for the gig. As I recall, he was due to be paid $500, not including the deposit. So, before the event even started, the bride got into a screaming match with the DJ because she forgot she had booked him. It ended with him screaming, "I have a contract and I'm going to sue you." Only he didn't say it that nicely. The event itself was booked for 100 people, so we had 2 bartenders and 5 servers. That may seem like a weird number for a party that big, but all the booze was cash and carry. Guests pay for it themselves. The guests arrived and everything was cruising along fine up until after the ceremony was over and it was time to feed the animals. As soon as everyone sits down, the whole place starts reeking of people smoking. We can get shut down if the health inspector drops in and the place smells like this. The manager had to tell the bride and groom that we will stop the event if they don't stop with the smoking. Meanwhile, the wedding party is wrecked. They got to drink as much as they want, so shots of Fireball and Hennessy. The food with the party is 3 courses. Everyone gets the house salad, which is a basic mixed greens and vinaigrette. It took almost half an hour to get the salads out because so many people had to have ranch instead. When it came time for the dinner to be rolled out, it took even longer. So many people had moved, we couldn't figure out where the food was supposed to go. Also, tons of meatheads completely changed their minds when they saw the prime rib. "Oh, can I get that instead?" Or even better, "That's not what I ordered." It was a crap show. We ended up with dozens of extra entrees that we threw in the trash. Also, almost every single prime rib came back because it wasn't well done enough. When it came time for dessert, they had an ice cream-based item that had to be in the fridge right up until we served it. The fridge broke and all of their ice cream was soup. It was a hot summer that year. The broken fridge wasn't on them, but it really added to the misery. After all the drama, I'm ready to just get my guaranteed auto tip and get out of there. I gave the couple the bill, and they immediately wanted to speak to the manager. They had him remove the auto tip because they said that they were paying in cash and wanted to leave the tip in cash too. I know, that makes no sense. It turns out they didn't leave any tip at all. 7 servers and bartenders worked 7 hours for these people, and they stiffed us on a $6,000 check. We did, however, make $43 each from the cash and carry tips. That night I went home and Googled the names of the bride and groom. The first thing that came back were mugshots. Every request needs a ticket? Understood. A few years ago, I was an IT analyst for an aerospace company in Toronto. There were 3 sites and 1 analyst for each site. I was barely able to keep up with the workload for my site, but managed. One day I found out that 1 analyst had given a month notice and had already quit. The company did not replace him. I had to drive daily between 2 cities to manage both sites. Shortly after, my boss was let go, and I was given a new boss who lived in another country. The work piled up, and several employees at a time would have non-working computers because there was nobody to help them. I had to stop supporting projects that I was involved in with other managers, like getting 20 computers for the factory floor. This was definitely going to blow up, and I needed to cover myself. I had a talk with the GM and explained that I'd get walk-ups, phone calls, texts, and emails because most of the employees refused to use the ticket system. I'd even have employees coming in when I was on a call and try talking in my ear. The GM decided that all requests must come in the form of a ticket. I adopted a no ticket equals no work policy and enforced it on all employees and managers. I also stopped answering texts and calls. I'd answer all email requests with, "Please open a ticket." Most managers refused, so I would just thank them for their time while they fumed off to file a complaint against me. A week went by with no copier on the main floor because everyone refused to open a ticket to request more ink. Everyone had to walk downstairs to make their copies. A week went by with several lathes in the factory not working because everyone refused to open a ticket. Several computer illiterate and lazy employees would now have to ask their coworkers for help because they refused to open a ticket and now they're behind on their work. Sometimes a new employee would spend 2 or 3 days in the office with no laptop and no user account because the request never came in the form of a ticket. Employees would go on business trips without laptops because they refused to open a ticket. This went on for several months, and I was able to partially manage both sides, but it was exhausting arguing with everyone every day. I'd get threatened by management all the time, but nothing would ever come of it. I found out one day that the company wasn't planning on replacing the employee who quit, so I had enough. I spent a few weeks declining requests as usual, but when they came from a manager, I'd add, "And if you don't like it, then fire me." Request denied. Eventually, I decided my mental health was more valuable than the company, and when the last analyst went on vacation, I simply left my phone and laptop on my desk and stopped coming in for my shifts. 0 notice given. A week later, I get a call from HR. They found my wife's number as an emergency contact and said I let them down and there was nobody to help. I replied with, "Good, now you know how it feels," and left it at that. 6 months later, the only analyst left tells me the company replaced my position with 2, but they're still in rough shape. All they had to do was replace an employee. Need a car? Background. I'm a police officer in a large city in the south of England. In the police, there are 4 levels of driving. For ease, I'll call these 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 being the lowest level, normal driving, and 1 being the highest, high-performance cars, blue lights. All levels of drivers can drive any police vehicle. Cast. We've got me, a PC of 18-month service at the time of this story, level 4 driver. Tom, a PC called Tom, who was, and probably still is, a jerk. A newly qualified level 2 driver with 3-year service at the time. And Sergeant, a sergeant on my team. The story. A few years ago, I was on a response team, answering 999 calls. The general rules on vehicle allocations is first come, first served. However, if there are no vehicles available, then lower-level drivers have to give up their vehicle to higher qualified drivers. Simple. On this fateful day, several years ago, the high-powered vehicle was away for a service, and in its place, an old, crappy Vauxhall Astra Estate, so we weren't short of a car. Also on the fleet was a brand new, less than 1,000 miles, Ford Focus Estate. Now, I was the first out of the briefing room and into the yard, so I made a beeline for the brand new motor and whipped the keys out of the ignition. Tom also made a dart for the vehicle. Realizing I got the keys, he clapped his hands together and gestured for me to throw him the keys. Nope, no chance. What a jerk. He started to complain that he's the higher qualified driver and so he needs the car. My response? The Astra is still available. Off I went to check my emails before heading out. As I'm logging on, a private call on my radio. It's the sergeant. Tom says there's no cars and you won't give him yours. Me. I'll pop into the office. Off I went to the office and explained how Tom was just a jerk and was being a jerk and that there is still a car available. The Astra, which he just doesn't want. Sergeant. Make sure Tom gets a car. As long as it's got 4 wheels, it'll do. Me. No worries. I think you can see where this is heading. Off I go into the yard and collect the keys to the Astra. Me. Tom, Sergeant said to make sure you've got a car. Here you go. I give him the keys to the Astra. Tom, big grin on his face. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the outcome, but I'm reliably informed that when Tom got out to the yard and hit unlock on the fob, he went ballistic, calling me all the names under the sun and refusing to use the car for the whole shift. He wouldn't drive it any further than the next nearest station to pick up a different car. I feel a little bit sorry for my mate who was paired with him for the shift. He didn't challenge me on vehicle allocations again and generally stayed out of my way until he left a few months later. I'm testifying against my sister to make her lose custody of her stepkids. I'm not going to be shy about this. My sister sucks. She's a horrible, self-centered person who thinks that she's the main character. She's not only a horrible person, she is a step monster. She married this guy who's a real pushover 3 years ago. He has 2 kids who are 10 and 6. My sister constantly complains about them, saying things like the 6-year-old is gross because he sips too loudly or has stained clothing. For the love of goodness, he's 6. That's what a kid is supposed to do. And she's so mean to the 10-year-old. She acts straight up jealous of her. I've caught her taunting her that daddy loves my sister more than her. She is horrible. I've straight up called her out after trying to talk to her a million times. At Christmas, she was saying that it would be nice to have the kids there, and I said, "Why? You hate them." This was when everything was almost over and she had been bragging to her friends that her husband had spent more on her than on his daughter. A fight ensued. My parents reprimanded me, but my cousins took my side and called her out, noting every moment that they had witnessed her being horrible. Her husband obviously took her side and said that she was a wonderful stepmother and that the kids love her. To which I said that was a lie, as I had consoled them countless times after they were taunted by my sister. They left and we haven't talked since. One day I was running errands and run into my step-nephews who were with their mother. I had never met her, and honestly, she is wonderful. We decided to have some coffee. While the kids were playing, she asked me how her kids behaved, etc. I said they were wonderful, and then I just spilled the beans on my sister, how awful she was, what I've heard her say to the kids, the inaction of her ex-husband. By the end, she was horrified. She said the kids didn't like her, but she always chucked it up to my sister being the new woman in their father's life. She said the kids never really said anything even when she asked. I then told her that I was very concerned for the kids, as my sister had straight up told the 10-year-old that it would be better if she disappeared from her father's life. Their mother saw red and asked me if I'd be willing to testify. She said that this was unacceptable and she would be taking their father to court again. I said I would recount the events that I witnessed and could ask my cousins who witnessed a lot too. She was very grateful. I asked my cousins who were all willing to recount the events. Word got around to my parents, and by extension my sister, and they've been calling me the biggest jerk on the planet who would betray family on a whim. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Clearly, the kids' well-being is being neglected by their father. I'm normally not a fan of people injecting themselves into someone else's relationship, but you're looking out for these kids, and there's nothing wrong at all with that. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you testify against your own sister or not? Please let us know. I'd do a lot more to her than just testify. Update. My friends catfished me in the worst way possible. Recently, my friends and I went to a restaurant for dinner, where I noticed that there was a cute waiter that was serving us. I told my friends, not thinking much of it. Throughout the whole dinner, they proceeded to embarrass me about it, sometimes even around the waiter, even asking if I could take a selfie with him. At the end of the dinner, while waiting for a friend to use the restroom, I noticed a friend of mine talking to the waiter, one-on-one. I panicked, worried that they'd embarrass me again, but worse. I left. The bill was already paid for, and I waited outside for them. They all came out smiling and laughing, saying they told the waiter that I thought he was cute and they got his number. I felt beyond embarrassed now. They put his number in my phone, and I said, "Oh well," and sent him a text. I wasn't expecting much to come out of this, so I was shocked to see him reply. We continued to talk throughout the night, even after my friends and I parted ways. So the next morning, I was happy. The waiter and I were having a good conversation the same morning. Later at lunch, my friend confessed that it wasn't the waiter that I was texting, it was my friend. My friend group was in on it and even made a group chat to laugh at me behind my back, leaking the messages and such. I was so mortified. They told me in front of most of our friend group, as I went to dinner with only 4 of them. I angrily left, sending a message to our Discord server saying, "Forget you guys," and went off on them. They thought I was upset at being catfished, and while I am somewhat upset, I was mainly upset for being turned into a joke and laughed at behind my back by people who I thought were my friends. 2 of them are my best friends. Some of them have said that I'm overreacting, and some say that I'm making it a bigger problem than it needs to be. My family says I should drop them, but I don't know what to do. Some people say I'm right for being upset and I'm not overreacting. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Those people are not your friends. Drop them like a bad habit and move on. Friends don't make fun of you or go out of their way to make you feel uncomfortable. You deserve better friends. I'm sorry that they were so awful to you. Jokes are only funny if everybody's laughing. Well, what do you think? Is OP overreacting or not? Please let us know. When something legit hurts you, it's not a joke. I'd drop those people ASAP. Naval officer didn't want to live with enlisted. Gets fired. So this happened about 1.5 years ago, but I recently heard the news on how far my revenge went. I was a Navy enlisted service member and I was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan for a few years before I got transferred back stateside. I worked in the main hospital that cared for service members and their beneficiaries. It's a small hospital, so everyone knows everyone. Shortly after I left, I caught wind of a new physician officer working in the radiology department. My friends would say he's horrible to work with, but that's nothing new. However, someone saw him print a letter and he left it on his desk and took a picture of it and sent it to me. He's requesting to move from enlisted housing to officer. Edit. Found out it's not a private letter. He did actually send it to housing, and most of housing is ran by enlisted members. For context, military housing is available for those who are married, have a family, or are qualified based on their rank and depending on the military base itself. Typically, officer housing is much nicer than the enlisted. In Yokosuka, housing is basically all the same all around because it's overseas. But most of the housing are apartments, and each apartment complex is called a tower. Example, Fuji Tower. There are 9 towers, and 2 are for officers since enlisted members outnumber officers by a lot. Now, one thing about the military, stuff happens. When getting stationed, it is the active duty member's responsibility to either apply for housing on or off base before arriving, depending on what's allowed. If there is limited space and you don't apply for housing on time, then you get put wherever there is space. So our new officer got placed in an enlisted tower. Mind you, enlisted members have families of their own, and other officers have been placed in enlisted housing before without an issue. Here are some quotes in his letter. And yes, this guy has a PhD. I have many valid objections to living in a building of almost all enlisted, and even many lower enlisted being an officer. There's a lot of crime, violent actions, and drinking that happens in enlisted housing. There are also assaults and other creeps. I have a good-looking family, a wife and 2 daughters. There are prime targets to be victims for these enlisted deviant activities. My family should be safe in housing that is with officers. Officers are much more respectable, and these types of deviant activities are incredibly rare compared to the deviant activities of enlisted being commonplace. Other officer families will not want to visit us because our family lives on enlisted housing. My children need to make friends with other officer children. My wife needs to make friends with other officers' wives. I need to make friends with other officers. Forcing an officer to live in a large apartment building with almost all enlisted is unethical. You get the idea. So this guy basically looks down on all enlisted service members, assuming every single one of us are some sort of criminals. The kicker? He was an enlisted army member before going to officer school. In civilian terms, think of a manager that discriminates and calls all of his subordinates criminals, violent, etc. based on your job position. Forgetting that some have a family and, maybe aren't any of those things. And he not only has the authority to ruin your work life, he can ruin your personal life, deny days off, make you stay late, write you up if he doesn't like you, and not letting you get promoted. Safe to say, everyone was upset, and I have nothing to lose. I was separating soon and figured I'd have some fun before I got out. I created a burner Facebook account and posted the letter and the officer's picture on a popular military enlisted group page. Within 2 days, it spread like wildfire. But I wasn't done yet. The military has something called challenge coins. Think of trading cards, but custom coins that come in many shapes and sizes. I designed one with his face and a big gesture in the back. On top of that, I designed stickers to show how proud us deviants are. Other coin designs came from other people as well, but so far I think mine was more popular. I sold over 70 coins to the initial person who originally sent me the picture at a huge discounted price so that she can sell them for a profit herself. So the officer's face is everywhere because most people will keep their coins displayed on their desk. No matter where the officer went at work, he would see his face on someone's desk, and since it didn't have his name on the coin, can't officially say it's him. I sold more stateside and even got some sent to Europe. I made about $3,000 overall, which was nice. The story got the officer sent up to captain's mast, which is like Navy court. He tried to say his wife was the one that wrote the letter, but no one is buying it because her writing style is way worse. She even tried to take the fall, but no one believed her. They both ended up deleting all social media. Due to this, he got served 3 UCMJ articles, which basically are his offenses. But there's more. When you're in the military, you have a deadline on how long you can be a certain rank. If you don't pick up, then you're kicked out. And because he's new and got served UCMJ articles, he won't be up for promotion and therefore was involuntarily separated. Also, the officer program he went through pays for his PhD. When the military pays for your PhD, you have to serve 10 years to pay them back. If you don't complete 10 years, you have to pay the military back with money instead of time. So he lost his job, and now he has to pay back the military for his PhD. And since it takes a while for the paperwork to have him and his family sent back stateside, you can bet he socially suffered because no one worked with him. Am I the jerk for pulling my daughter from a field trip because her teacher made her stay with a kid she doesn't like? My daughter, Bryn, who's 9, is going on a trip to a nearby water park with her class next week. She loves water and has been talking about it for months, so I was a bit thrown off when she came home crying a few days ago and told me she didn't want to go. I asked her why, and she wouldn't tell me because she thought that I'd think she's a bad person. When I finally coaxed it out of her, she said that her teacher, Miss N, has forced her to be the buddy of her classmate, Ben, for the entirety of the trip. She was to ride the bus with Ben to and from the trip, eat lunch with him, and go on all the rides with him instead of spending time with her friends. She then said nobody likes Ben because he whines whenever they have to do work and picks his nose and wipes boogers everywhere. I was horrified, not only because Miss N had made Bryn do such a thing, but also because she had made her believe she was a bad person for not wanting to. Unfortunately, this wasn't my first experience with Miss N, as she frequently used my soft-spoken, intelligent older daughter as a behavior buffer for the naughty kids until I threatened to report her to the superintendent. It's clear to me that Miss N is still too comfortable with enforcing archaic roles on her kids and forcing the girls to do unpaid emotional labor for the sake of the boys. I immediately sent Miss N an email condemning her actions. She sent me back an email with a bunch of BS that basically ended with, "If Bryn goes on the trip, she has to be Ben's buddy." Fine. I informed her Bryn would not be attending then. I immediately booked VIP tickets the same day her class was going so she could still go to the park and see her friends. What happened next, I wasn't expecting. Bryn is quite popular, so I've gotten to know a lot of the moms in her class. When I let them know what Miss N did, some of them were so horrified that they also pulled their kids out of the trip. In total, 8 kids out of a class of 20 are either not going or going with us. Today I got an email from Miss N saying that because almost half of the class isn't going, they either have to raise the cost for the other students or not go at all. She practically begged me to let Bryn go and tell all the other parents to let their kids go, promising she wouldn't make Bryn do anything she didn't want to. I told her she should have thought about that before she tried to make my daughter do her job. My husband said I was being a bit petty and that Miss N clearly feels bad about what she did and I should just let Bryn go as I've already gotten my way. He asked me if I really wanted to deprive kids of what they've been waiting for all year. The thing is, if this wasn't Miss N's first offense, I probably would have agreed. But she has a pattern of this type of behavior, and hopefully this will put a stop to it. Plus, if she has to explain this to her superiors, I have receipts. Is my husband right, or am I justified? Update. Bryn was the only student assigned a buddy. The rest of the students were free to do what they wanted. Am I alone in suspecting that the teacher isn't so much feeling bad about what she did, but faintly terrified of either having to explain to her superiors why the trip is suddenly in jeopardy, or the backlash from other parents when it comes out why the trip that she organized has fallen apart? Not to mention that if you've booked VIP tickets, I'm going to guess that if you did cancel your plans to suit her, you'd end up paying twice over, once for the school tickets and again for the VIP tickets you've already bought. Not the jerk. I'd stick with a simple, "Sorry, I've already committed to and paid for my own arrangements for that date now." Bryn was the only student assigned a buddy. The rest of the students were free to do what they wanted. I mean, just this is the only reason you need to not be the jerk. I can't believe anyone would think that this is in any way acceptable. Teacher is a piece of work. Not the jerk. Stand your ground. Do not let her be used by the teacher. ETA. I would still write to the superintendent and anyone else who might be able to prevent other kids from being used this way. My husband lets our kids run wild when his parents visit, and I've had enough. We live 3 blocks away from my parents, and they see our kids almost every day. My husband's parents live a couple of states away and only see the kids a few times a year. It's easy when we go see them, since we only visit when the kids are out of school. But when they come see us, it's at random intervals throughout the year. Not a problem, really. They're excellent grandparents, with one small exception. They think our rules go out the window when they visit. It's mean that we don't make the kids their favorite food every day. Why can't the kids watch TV with them before they do their chores and homework? Why do the kids have to be in bed so early? It drives me crazy that I'm the bad guy because my husband won't put his foot down, so I have to do it. They came last week. On Monday, as soon as dinner was over, they wanted the kids to pay attention to them. They wanted to take the kids to see Avatar on a school night. My husband allowed it. Last straw. I told him that he knew that throwing the kids off their schedule did me over, so I gave him the choice of either enforcing our rules or I would. He said he would take care of it. Second night, there was a hockey game on. He wanted to watch it with our son who loves hockey. I reminded my husband that our son had chores to do and homework. He said it was just a hockey game. I told the kids to get their stuff. I took them, their clothes, and their homework to my parents' house. My mom and dad will watch them and then take them to school in the morning. I went back home and they were waiting for me. I'm being controlling by denying them time with the grandkids. I'm not the only person allowed to make decisions regarding the kids. They came all this way to see them, and I'm being a jerk by keeping them on a schedule. Fine. They're visiting for a couple of weeks. Wednesday, after I picked up the kids from school and dropped them off at home with my in-laws, then I went out for the first time in ages. I told my husband I would be out late and didn't want to wake anyone, so I would be at my parents' house. Did the same thing Thursday through today. My husband has been calling and texting and coming over to tell me that I need to come home because the house is a disaster because his parents won't do anything. They're on vacation and they're there to see the kids, not to clean up. The kids are having a fun time with no rules, and he has been contacted by the school because no homework was turned in on Thursday or Friday. I didn't even answer those texts. I said I would be back after his parents left or he enforced the rules. He said I was taking it too far and that it was affecting his work. Honestly, tough crap. Edit. My son just texted me about his gym clothes for today. I guess he never put them on the hamper and they didn't get washed. Now I'm wondering what else my husband didn't get done. Edit 2. Kids are 9 and 11. In-laws visit 4 or 5 times a year for at least a week. Not the jerk, and I seriously applaud you. So many women take this kind of crap and never have the guts to stand up for themselves. Playing nice sucks. Husband and parents will most likely call you difficult. They're upset the house is a mess? They can clean it themselves. You're not the maid, and you were not put on this earth to ensure everyone has a lovely time but you. You are the one who has to take care of the aftermath. If your husband and his parents can't understand that kids need routines and boundaries, you're in for a heck of a ride. Hopefully you've made it well known that you won't stand for that type of crap. OP. The kids have chores, but they aren't doing them, and they're spending a lot of money on delivery since I'm not there to cook and getting the kids to prep. I'm wondering how much food I'm going to have to toss when I get home. I feel you. You're going to have to pick up the pieces after all of this. They might not learn their lesson, and you still have extra work to do. There's 3 adults. Can't one of them put together a meal? They're just being lazy and expecting you to do everything for them. You are not the hired help. They should treat you as such. I'd be fuming. Not the jerk. He wants to let his parents have their way in your house. That is not okay. You guys probably have a good reason for the way you handle things. If he can't understand that, then just stay with your folks whenever his visit. Although I do wonder what you mean by they are excellent grandparents. They sound like entitled jerk boomers, but must be younger. OP. They honestly love the kids and provide them with some awesome experiences and gifts that are out of our budget right now. They're putting money into their education funds and a fund to help them get started in life afterwards. They do a lot for us. I just hate that they throw off our schedules when they visit. Fine. They are okay grandparents, but they sound like bad parents and insufferable in-laws. I would disagree with the okay grandparents part. They're throwing the kids off their schedule, actively saying, don't do homework or chores, spend time with us instead. That is not being a good grandparent. You telling your husband, honestly tough crap, is right, not the jerk. Personally, I relax the rules around stuff like snacks and TV when grandparents are here, but I have the last word and I would be furious to be overruled. Shrugging off the homework is unacceptable. Don't go home. Let your husband learn how to be a parent. You're the jerk. Parents who keep their kids on strict schedules all the time are unnecessarily cruel. Like, okay, having structure and all that is fine, but when you won't let your kids just enjoy some time with their grandparents a few times a year, you seriously sound like a stickler. Don't be surprised when hubby leaves you for a woman who knows how to have fun. When I met my husband, he was still married to his ex at the time, who, just like you, never wanted to have any fun and took everything way too seriously. She always tried to boss him and their son around. The more he told me about it at work, he was my boss at the time, the more I reassured him that he deserved so much better than that, because he did. Well, now he has me, and I would never treat him the way she did. When his parents come over, I made sure to be a good host, and we let our son stay up late because before we know it, his grandparents will be in heaven. Maybe talk to your doctor about chill pills or something. Edit. I've been called much worse names than homewrecker, so save your breath. The reason wealthy older men are leaving their wives for younger women like myself is not just because they simply find us attractive, but more importantly, it's because of how we make them feel, respected and appreciated, as opposed to their longtime wives who do nothing but nag and disrespect them. If these older men just thought we were hot, then sure they'd cheat with us. But putting a $10,000 ring on my finger was the result of how I treated him, like the king that he is, something his ex-wife forgot how to do over the years. The lady of the house insists. About 30 or so years ago, I dropped out of high school. My first job was as a truck jockey for a bloke who owned his own removal truck and had a delivery contract with a local chain of furniture stores. The work was hard, and days were usually pretty long. I have an old payslip somewhere for an 84-hour week, but I was young, fit, and healthy, and the work saved me from needing a gym membership. Plus, the cash was really good for a 16-year-old. One long, reasonably warm Saturday, we're heading to our last delivery before going home. It was close to 6 p.m., and we'd still have a 45 to 60-minute drive home after, so the boss was in no mood for messing around. The delivery was in Melbourne's wealthiest suburb, lots of big houses and old money. Anyway, we rock up at this place, and the boss heaves a sigh of relief. Massive double-entry doors at the front. We were delivering a 3-seater sofa bed. Things were heavy, with the metal fold-out bed inside, so anything that made the delivery that little bit easier was seen as a positive. As usual, the boss hops into the back of the truck and starts unwrapping the load to get it onto the tailgate, while I go knock on the door, clipboard in hand. I ring the bell, old-fashioned turn the brass handle thing, and a butler opens the door. I see just over his shoulder a massive entry hall with a big, wide staircase leading up to the second story. Awesome. Him. Yes? Me. Good day. We're here to deliver a sofa bed for, I check the clipboard, Miss Rich Lady. Him, gesturing around to the right side of the house. Delivery entrance is around the side. Me. Oh, okay. I trot around to the side door, thinking it would be a straight-up delivery into a room near that door. I wait, and he eventually opens the door. Per our SOP, I ask him to show me where the furniture is going, so I could map the route for the boss. He gestures to, I'm genuinely not kidding, a spiral staircase. Him. Up those stairs. Me. Up those stairs? Him. Yes. Me. But I noticed there's a lot more room at the front door, plus the bigger staircase there. Can we deliver via that route instead? Him. The lady of the house wishes for it to be delivered via the rear staircase. Me. Really? There's no way we're getting that sofa bed up there without hurting ourselves, or the furniture, or the house. Why can't we deliver via the front? Him. The lady of the house simply will not permit it. Me. Okay. I'll go let my boss know. By the time I get back to the truck, the boss has the sofa sitting on the tailgate, ready for us to carry it in. Boss. Ready? Me. Not quite. You're not gonna believe it, but they want us to deliver via a side entrance and up a spiral staircase. Him. The heck they do? Me. Yep, old maid in the suit and tie said so. How many times did you ask him? Me, unsure why. A couple. Wasn't sure I heard him right the first time, but he said the customer won't allow it. Nah, BS. Wait here. The boss strides up to the front door and rings the bell, perhaps a little aggressively. Butler opens it, words are exchanged. The boss gets pretty heated and demands to see the customer, Mrs. Rich Lady. Mrs. Rich Lady. What's all this nonsense? Boss. Your fella here said we can't deliver through these doors and up that staircase behind you. The other way is too narrow. We'll bust our backs trying to get it up there. That's not my concern. My concern is for the furniture to be delivered via the side entrance. Boss. Nah, we're not doing that. Just let us go this way and we'll be out of your hair in no time. I insist that you deliver the furniture in accordance with the terms of the contract. Cue malicious compliance. The boss straightens up, squares his shoulders. Okay, sure, no worries. We'll get it done, as you said, in accordance with the delivery contract. He walks back to me, massive grin on his face, and tells me to grab the highlighter, fluorescent marker, from the cab. I go grab it and hand it to him. He highlights something on the delivery docket on the clipboard, tosses it onto the sofa, and gestures at me to grab my end. I'm wondering what's about to go down, but I know my boss well enough to know we aren't about to carry this thing through a side door and up a spiral staircase. As we get near the front doors, the boss tells me we're putting the sofa bed down. He grabs the clipboard and politely asks Rich Lady to sign for delivery. Rich Lady. I'm not signing anything yet. You haven't delivered it where I want it. Boss. Ah, but we have now. Please read the section I've highlighted. Rich Lady reads it. Oh, well, that changes things. Through the front doors will be fine. Boss. Sorry, please read the second highlighted section. She reads that part. But I've changed my mind. Boss. Sorry. As you can see, it says that deliveries must be made the safest way possible without risking injury to us. And if we still disagree after 3 attempts at making delivery, the customer takes responsibility for completing the delivery from the front of the premises. We asked you 4 times, so, as you requested, I'm delivering per the terms of the delivery contract that you signed. She goes red. But how am I supposed to get this upstairs? Boss. I'm afraid that's no longer my problem, ma'am. Please sign the delivery docket so we can get out of your hair. I took that as my cue to buzz off, pack up the wraps and straps, and prep the truck for departure. We managed to hold in our laughter until the end of the driveway. Am I the jerk for not letting an elderly woman have my son's seat on the bus? Alright, so my son, who's 17, has weekly therapy appointments that I take him to. Unfortunately, my husband let our daughter borrow his car and then had an emergency at work, so he had to use my car, so my son and I had to take the bus. It wasn't ideal, but I'd rather the bus than miss an appointment. While it isn't my place to share why he goes to therapy, I will say that he will often forget to eat. I usually make sure he's fed, but due to the mess in the morning, it slipped my mind. The bus wasn't too crowded, but all the seats were taken. My son wasn't doing too well, and I could tell he was feeling dizzy from hunger plus the bus. So the second someone got off their seat, I set him down. I then tried to find a chocolate bar I had in my bag. While this is happening, I noticed an elderly woman and her adult daughter standing beside us. I didn't pay much attention until the daughter tapped me on the shoulder. She asked if my son could move so that her elderly mother could have a seat. I felt really bad, I really did, but my son was not doing great and standing would make it harder. I had found the chocolate and he was eating it slowly, but if he stood up right then, I can assure you that he would have fainted. I apologized to her and explained that my son wasn't feeling well. She rolled her eyes at me and said that she saw him standing earlier and that he's a young, healthy teenager and he'll be fine. I apologized once again and told her that he wasn't feeling well and that if he was, then he himself would have offered her a seat. The daughter told me to look at her mother, and I admit, the poor woman looked really tired, but I couldn't. My son had started to lean against me, so I told the woman one last time that I was sorry and to ask someone else. I then heard them both whispering and calling me an entitled jerk. And when we got off the bus, a woman that got off with us said that a teenager can handle standing more than an elderly woman can, and that she hopes someone treats me like that when I'm her age. My son was so out of it, I don't think he even noticed or cared, but I can't get this off of my mind. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You handled it the same way I would have, politely explaining that your son wasn't feeling well and needed to sit down. I'm sure there were many other people they could have asked, and many other people that could have offered, so I'm not sure why they felt the need to pick on you and your son. Not the jerk. Having an invisible illness is difficult for just this very reason. I too get these crashes on occasion, and there's no choice to it. If I don't sit down and get something in me, a Gatorade, if nothing else, I will pass out. I've been this way all my life, thin and chunky, and yes, have been to billions of doctors over it. Slight exaggeration. 99% of the time I manage it well, but sometimes forget to eat or think it's been a lot less time since last eating than it has been. Am I the jerk for telling a guy to move his crying baby out of a quiet enclosure at the zoo? I, 19 male, visited the zoo today with my family, and we were checking out the koalas, who I was especially excited to see. You may not know this, but koalas apparently need over 18 hours of sleep a day to function, or else they can get quite unhealthy quite quickly. And so any exhibit of them at the zoo will often come with an expectation that you maintain a certain level of silence while observing them. This zoo today was no exception. You are made to go through 2 gates, both of which have signage saying, "Please be quiet, keep the noise down, silence please," etc. And then the doors to the koala house itself has another sign, "Please keep noise levels to a minimum." With all those reminders, I figured people would get the memo. But as soon as we entered the enclosure, which was a small room indoors with a glass window looking into the koala pen, I spotted a couple in their early 30s with 2 kids and a baby. I somewhat apprehensively tried to observe the koalas. They were so cute, and my little sister was happy to see them. But then, like clockwork, the baby starts crying. Hardly the baby's fault. It's a baby. They cry. So I gave the dad of the family the benefit of the doubt, thinking he'd either take the baby out or calm her down. A few moments pass, the baby gets more annoyed and cries louder. The koalas scurry away, hiding in their cubby holes, and others wake up from their sleeping. I give the dad the look. I feel like everyone knows the look. We've either had someone give it to us or given it to someone else. I'm not sure I'd ever been at this end of it, but I definitely received some looks at times. Baby continues to cry. I, being a socially awkward autistic teenager, grapple with the idea that the dad might have missed my giving him the look, so I do the classic. I shake my head and I give a little sigh. No change. I throw another look his way, this time a little more firm, but I feel like I overdid it. My eyes are a little too intense perhaps, because suddenly the dad is saying, in the voice of someone who's just gotten a lecture, "Well, all right, mate, it's just a baby." To which I reply with a gesture towards the sign, "Silence, please." "But it's a baby," he says. "Well, don't bring a baby in here," I reply in a whisper. My parents jump on me, thinking I'm out of line, and the couple and their kids give me the meanest of looks and leave the enclosure, leaving me feeling very tense. What do we think? I feel like this is a very common struggle in a public place where there aren't always members of staff to enforce the rules. We want to pick our battles, of course, but this family bringing their baby in spoiled my little sister's magical moment of seeing a koala for the first time. Surely they should have seen the signs and thought, probably best not to bring little Charlie in. Or, if they really wanted to see the koalas, the dad could have stayed outside with the baby and the mom and the kids could have gone in. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They obviously were able to read the signs, and they just thought that it didn't apply to them. I think you did a great job. It was mostly nonverbal, and dude finally got the hint, but still tried to make excuses. "It's a baby." Well, yes, but baby doesn't know when and where is proper to be noisy, because it's a baby. Therefore, be a parent and also be mindful of other creatures, humans or not. So you did have to let him know that the signs are there for a reason, and you even whisper yelled, which showed that you were trying to keep quiet out of respect. Librarians don't put up with that in their domain. Koalas shouldn't have to either. But they can't speak, so they need an advocate. You are a great koala advocate. Great job, OP, and you can tell your parents I said so. I'm a mom of 2, grandmother of 3, and my kids would never have kept a crying baby in a quiet place because I taught them manners, and I also took my crying babies out of church, a wedding, and a theater. Not an infant, a 5-year-old who insisted he was old enough to go to the movies even though he was really sensitive to noise. I told him he wouldn't like it and he was feeling really left out because his friends went to the movies. So yeah, too loud. Not a scary movie, but the noise was too much and he got scared, so he cried and we left. Because I knew that I was responsible for my little one's noise in public. My little sister destroyed my apartment. Now I'm suing her. I, 26, male, have always protected and stuck my neck out for my little sister, who's 25, but she has a toxic case of baby syndrome. There are 5 of us, with the oldest being 35. The past 2 years, she's been reckless, irresponsible, immature, and above all else, disrespectful. She'll send 10-page letters going off on you, and then she'll block you before you can reply. Basically, reverted back into a teenager. 9 months ago, she needed a place to stay to get her life back on track after a bad relationship. Her credit is horrible. She can't rent, she can't lease, and I had an extra room, so I let her stay. She manipulated me into moving out so that she can do her own thing, grow up, become an adult. So I left. It put me in a bad financial spot, but I did it for her. I told her as long as she was responsible, kept up with the bills, we'd be good. No eviction. She got a repossession on my credit some years back when I helped her with a car, as well as our brothers, so this was going to be my last straw. She agreed because she was planning on moving her best friend and girlfriend in, so now 3 people splitting the bills. Cool. I had nothing to worry about. The money's there. She alone brings in $7,000 a month. Why should I worry? Come to find out, rent was 3 months behind. She had changed all the contact info in the portal, so I was getting no notifications. Keep in mind, this whole time we had been hanging out and seeing each other working on rebuilding our relationship. She had been looking me straight in the eyes, lying to me, telling me things were paid. And I kept telling her, okay, I trust you because you want everyone to treat you as an adult. Lights cut off, just everything behind. She'd been getting the police called over there numerous times for domestic reasons. When the leasing office finally got a hold of me, it was a mess. So now I'm trying to clean it all up. $7,000 is what I owe now. She has no intent on paying or helping, especially since she just got herself fired because she thinks she's too good to work. Works underneath her older sister, so always had job security. So now she's in cosmetology school. The apartment is damaged. Between the drama and the lies, she doesn't think this is all that serious. She even got arrested for the first time during one of those domestic calls. I picked her up driving in a snowstorm. She yelled at me as soon as she came through the doors. I'm sick of her. I don't want me and my girlfriend getting stuck paying for this. We can't afford it. So researched, and I can file a small claims case for property less than $20,000. She scammed the military, so she gets a 90% check that I would love to have garnished since she blows it all on BS anyways. I'm always cleaning up her messes. We're all done. I want to show her that she can't keep doing people over and getting away with it. I want my money. So, am I the jerk for suing my little sister? Not the jerk. She needs to learn some responsibility and accountability, and she's never going to do that if she keeps getting babied. It's not your responsibility to keep getting walked all over for the sake of the relationship. Not the jerk, but you are an enabler. I also would expect to sever all ties with your sister once this goes down. I find it interesting she brings in $7,000 a month and she happened to incur a $7,000 in damage estimate. Also, if you don't have any of your agreement in writing, I think you can kiss the legal case goodbye. I hope you learned your lesson. Just remember, no good deed goes unpunished. Am I the jerk for yelling at my family during dinner in a crowded restaurant? For context, my brother, who's 26, and I, 18 female, have never gotten along. He's hated me since before I was even born. He spent my entire childhood controlling everything I did, watched, and even ate. At Christmas, he ticked me off. I was quite proud of myself for buying my first vehicle all on my own. He called my truck a piece of junk. Then he said to our parents, "Insurance companies statistically have higher rates for female drivers than males." He was absolutely insinuating they shouldn't put me on their policy, simply because he's been on their policy since he turned 16 and has never paid for insurance. He knew darn well he was getting bumped off when I was at it. First of the year, our mom told him to get his own policy. He was pretty salty about that. Fast forward to this past weekend. It was our dad's birthday. Honestly, I didn't even want to go and sit through my brother's usual BS about how great he is. But I went, and as usual, pretty much remained quiet. My brother asks, "So, when are you moving out?" I was like, "Excuse me?" He says, "You're 18 now. You need to get out on your own now." Literally, no one said anything, so I told him it's none of his business. He says, "Well, I moved out when I was 19. Here's where things spiraled. I said to him, You're not even on your own yet, since you haven't bothered paying a single penny of rent in 7 years. He was fuming and tried changing the topic. My mom made a comment about that soon changing. Brother's girlfriend was like, "What?" So I told her. He moved out at 19 and hasn't paid our parents a penny of rent all these years. She was livid. Unbeknownst to anyone at that table, she had been paying my brother rent for 2 years because he led her to believe that he was paying the rent. The topic went off somewhere else, then right back to me. My brother trying to give me fatherly advice by saying I should focus on my current job and forget wasting time with college. This was absolutely unsolicited advice. It ticks me off when he does this because he always does it, and he acts like because of our age gap, he has so much more knowledge than stupid me. He again comments about me moving out, says to our dad, "I can't believe you haven't kicked her out after she brought all those animals in your house." They both laugh. I had enough. I got up from the table and yelled, "Just leave me alone." My mom understood, but she doesn't want the family to fight. My dad said I was extremely rude by lashing out, caused a scene, made undue stress, and embarrassed everyone. Apparently, after I walked out, my brother says, "Well, she obviously has something wrong in her head." I felt bad because I'm sure a few kids dining with their families heard me and I shouldn't have spoken that way in front of them. And I guess I should have held it in and dealt with it later. But I've always let this crap slide and I was sick of it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're clearly aware causing a scene wasn't the best move, but if you're not going to get any support from your parents, everyone reaches a breaking point. Good news is, he's about to lose his girlfriend and be shown for the mooch that he is. People use situations like a public place to needle nerves. Your very much jerk brother thought he could keep going because he figured you wouldn't be able to react. He messed around and he found out. As for your father, he should have shut that crap down when your jerk brother started with his jealousy campaign. Not the jerk. My stepson thinks his kids are my responsibility. My wife was a lot younger than me, and she had a 10-year-old son when we met. Her ex had shared custody. I had a couple of grown kids from my first wife. My stepson, Charlie, and I never really bonded. He had a father, and he made it clear I wasn't his parent, just his mom's husband. I respected this. He was always polite and respectful, just distant. I helped pay for his university when he went, and we attended his graduation. When he got married, our invitation was made out to his mother +1. That was kind of a slap in the face, but we still attended and gave them a substantial cash gift to start their life. The thank you card didn't have my name on it. My first wife had passed from cancer and it broke me. I didn't want to go through that again. Her youth was one thing that attracted me to my second wife. I know it was selfish, but I liked having a beautiful young wife to take care of, and she liked me well enough. I didn't realize how much I loved her until she passed. She passed away from a stroke. She was 49. Charlie came to the funeral with his family. His wife, whom I had only met at the wedding, and his kids. We had known he had kids, but he had never made the effort to bring them for a visit. My wife loved the kids, but Charlie wouldn't make the effort to come see us. My wife only had a very small estate, and she left it all to Charlie. He also took almost everything of sentimental value that she owned before we got married. I didn't begrudge him any of it. My first grandchild just graduated last year, and I went to his graduation. My son and his wife have worked hard to get their kids into college, and I'm proud of them. My son mentioned that my grandson had a job waiting and would be debt-free pretty quickly. I asked how much he owed. Then I wrote him a check to pay it off. I plan to do this for all of my grandchildren. I guess my daughter-in-law and my stepson's wife are Facebook friends or something. He found out what I did, and he came around to ask if I planned to do the same for his kids. I didn't really have any connections to his kids. I don't see them. They don't consider me their grandfather. I've personally only ever seen them at the funeral. I was really put off by him coming by to ask about money after ignoring me for years. I know that if my wife were alive, she would want me to help out her son. It just felt dirty. I said that I had money for them in my will, and if they needed it for university, I would give it to them early. He said I'm a petty little man and that his mom would be ashamed of me for treating his kids like this. I don't really think I owe them anything. They have a real grandfather. I'm only including them in my will for my wife's sake. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You don't owe them anything, and it's very telling that Charlie wants no relationship with you except when it comes to money. They've already inherited under your wife's estate. In my opinion, you don't have an obligation to include them in your estate. I feel you have been more than generous in your treatment of your stepson. For the stepson to try and shame you and call you petty is shameful. Your decision, but I would cut this parasite out of my life and never look back. They have a biological grandfather that could meet their needs. Are your biological grandkids going to have 3 grandfathers leaving them money? I suspect not. So why should your step-grandkids get what would be a bonus inheritance in addition to the inheritance that they will receive from their father and mother's parents, and in addition to the inheritance they've already received from your wife? Basically, you're not treating your own grandkids fairly. Not the jerk, and I'd consider cutting them out of your will as well. He had his right to keep distance, but he can't expect to gain something. Your kids were in your life, so you helped their families out. That's how it works. He stated you are just his mother's husband, so he shouldn't expect anything. You want strict compliance, Mr. Food Service Driver? You get it. After undergrad, I moved to Texas to manage with a mostly local chain of Tex-Mex restaurants. At one of my first training stores, I was assigned a month in the kitchen to learn their back of house, such as the kitchen process. As I grew up in the business and had worked during college for a large casual dining chain, I was familiar and skilled in all of the general aspects of running this type of kitchen. However, it was a good opportunity to learn the particular aspects of this company's operations. After driving from Northeast Dallas to Grapevine early one morning, I greeted the driver, retrieved my clipboard, and started supervising the unload. He worked fast and had the truck unloaded in about 30 minutes or so. I knew I had a good 60 to 90 minutes left organizing, date dotting, rotating, breaking down boxes, etc., and was happy to sign him off so that he could get on his way while I continued putting away the order. For reference, this is how I had always done this and had never had any problems. As I'm working through the delivery, I notice we're short 1 case of 20-count shrimp. Obviously, that's quite a bit of money, but those types of things happen, and in my experience, the process was to call the vendor promptly and let them know. Most times, they would contact the driver, he'd find it on the truck and bring it later, or they would credit our order. But not this time. This time, the vendor tells me that they have a strict policy about this, and since I had signed the order, they didn't feel obligated to credit us. I told them that seemed like a bad policy when dealing with a restaurant that was doing around $70,000 a week in sales. This was 1995, and had paid promptly. They didn't seem to care. So next week, I again meet the driver on delivery day. Everything was going pretty much the same, except this week, when he handed me the delivery form to sign, I informed him that since we were short last week and his company didn't want to work with us, I wasn't signing anything until I had everything counted, and I couldn't count everything until I worked through the large pile. Since he couldn't leave without getting a signature, he got to stand on our back dock until I was done. I may have been a bit extra thorough counting and organizing that day because he was fuming when I got back to him about 1.5 hours later with a signed form. I assume that made him late enough to miss several deliveries that day, as many restaurants won't accept delivery between 10 and 2 p.m. But I know he was late to several stops because his company called me the next day and said that they couldn't work this way. They quickly agreed that if we cooperated and acted in good faith on future orders, they would return the favor. We received credit for the missing shrimp on our next delivery. Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to leave the house for 6 to 7 hours a day? I, 24 male, am Canadian and have been in the US for 10 months, where I've been living with my American girlfriend, who's 25, for 7 of them. My time in the US is almost up, and I'm stressing about having to return to Canada. For one, my family is reliant on me to make money to support my grandma and pay for her medical support. I also want to earn money to give my girlfriend. She deserves the world. Because I have so many side hustles going on to earn money, I admittedly don't spend a lot of time with my girlfriend, but I've always been open with her that I'm not able to give her a lot of attention right now, even though I love her more than anything. My girlfriend lost her job last month, and as a result has been at the house more often. We live in a 1-bedroom and split the rent evenly. She understands that I'm busy all day and night, but I don't like when she's sitting in the same room as me. Even her presence is distracting to me. She will try to start conversations, and she's not the cleanest, so I would ask her to go to the bedroom for the day while I worked in the living room at my desktop. She was okay with that for a few weeks, but began to complain that she was stuck in the bedroom. She says that since she's paying half of the rent, she has every right to be where she wants to be in the house. I agree. So after a few big fights, we agreed she would leave the house during the day and I would leave the house at night. Well, now she's upset that she's spending all day out of the house. Her car was in an accident last month and has been in the shop, so she's been going to do work in the boba shop by our house. Before anyone asks, I'm not able to do the work I do during the day outside of the house, which is why I leave in the evening. Today, my friend was over and was sitting on the couch where my girlfriend usually eats lunch. I say couch, but it's really an oversized love seat. My girlfriend went to go sit in her usual spot to eat lunch, but I asked her if she could eat in the kitchen instead so she would have more room to eat. She went to the kitchen, but I could tell she was upset. When I asked her if everything was okay, she said that she was tired of me controlling her. I think she's being selfish and not considering that I need a certain environment to concentrate and get my work done, and that I'm doing all of this for her and my family, and one day I'll be able to spend all the time in the world with her. But that right now, I'm really grinding, and most strong relationships are built on sacrifice. So, am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to accommodate my work schedule? You're the jerk. Your girlfriend does not have to leave the house all workday. That's ridiculous. You need to adapt or go to the library. I seriously don't understand why he keeps insisting he's doing this for her and his family, while not providing one iota of evidence of what he's actually done for her. He manipulates her into moving in with him, doesn't let her move out when she's wanted to multiple times, and now kicks her out of the home during the entire day for his convenience. There's only one person who matters in this relationship. Am I the jerk for pulling my brother aside and giving him a reality check that he needs to get over high school or else he will end up alone? My brother, Jeffrey, did not have a positive high school experience. Jeffrey didn't have any close friends and it was a lonely time for him. He doesn't have contact with anyone from high school. Jeffrey thinks that if a person has contact with anyone from their high school, even past teachers, it means they peaked in high school. He constantly makes assumptions about people, often strangers, based on his own high school experiences. The comments he makes are mean-spirited and uncalled for. An example is how we were visiting a relative who lives next to a park and there was a random teenager using the fitness equipment. Without any prompting, Jeffrey loudly said, "Better live up those quarterback days now. You'll be working at a gas station after graduation." Whenever we go out, Jeffrey makes rude comments about the employees and assumptions about their time in high school. We recently had a very sweet waitress at a restaurant, and Jeffrey felt the need to say, "Bet she was a prom queen once. Now look at her. Probably raising 5 kids alone." As I said, his comments are just mean and uncalled for. Recently, we were at my parents' house for their anniversary. My daughter, Emma, was in the living room doing an online dance challenge. Jeffrey made a comment about how Emma should have grown out of doing online dance challenges and, "Be careful, you'll wind up being your school's version of Kathy," who was the girl that I and Jeffrey knew in high school. Kathy was always nice to Jeffrey. Jeffrey had gotten angry and refused to talk to her after she went to prom with another boy instead of him. I reminded Jeffrey that Emma's 13 and to just leave her alone. Jeffrey again told me to, "Be careful, or else you'll end up like that big single mom who always talks about her cheerleader days." In the past, I've just told Jeffrey not to be rude, but talking about my daughter like this was when I had had enough. I pulled Jeffrey aside to a more private area and told him that he needs to get over high school. "I know it wasn't a great time for you and I'm sorry, but you need to stop taking that out on other people. Start seeing a therapist again and do whatever you need to move on. Otherwise, you're going to end up alone if you keep lashing out at others this way." Jeffrey told the rest of the family about what I said. I shared my side of the story, but several others told me that Jeffrey was just concerned for his niece's future after graduation, and telling him to get over high school dismissed and invalidated his experience. And not having close friends during developmental years can affect someone for their whole life. Jeffrey's experiences are valid, which is why I told him about returning to therapy so he can work on properly dealing with them. And Jeffrey's experiences do not give him the right to make such mean-spirited comments about others. It was a harsh reality check, but one that I believe Jeffrey needed before he ruins any more relationships. Am I the jerk? Guest takes all of our green tea, gets grumpy that we don't have any more. We have this extended stay guest, an older couple who is staying here while they either move in somewhere or help their daughter and their family move. They're nice people, but have that stereotypical old people crankiness. Since they got here, I've noticed that a lot of our inventory with breakfast and the coffee station started going quicker, specifically oatmeal, green tea, and our special flavored teas. I had a feeling it was them, because the rate that they've been getting low has been much quicker than it usually is, even during sold-out weekends. Plus, oatmeal and the teas are not that popular here, and typically we need to restock them for guests once a week average. To not make this sound like a witch hunt, this happened even on days where they were basically the only people who were in-house or the only ones who came down for breakfast and coffee. Since they've been here, restock has been daily. We had to buy more stock than usual for both, but it still depletes quickly. Now, green tea specifically. I put out between 10 to 15 bags when I'm on the morning shift, and after breakfast, each time I'm here, they're all gone. Even on days where they were the only people down for breakfast and coffee. Now that there's some context, fast forward to this morning. We only have 5 bags of green tea left total. The morning prior, I put the remaining bags out, and it was like 14 or so bags, and told management that we needed more that same morning. Since we only had 3 rooms in-house the previous night going into today, I believed we could survive on 4 bags, and I could get some more after my shift if we totally needed some. I got in, checked breakfast, nothing was touched, shocker, and night audit said he saw nobody all night or morning. That was the same with me through 9 a.m. when the couple came down a few minutes before breakfast was supposed to be closed. We say our good mornings and they grab food. After a few minutes, the wife comes to me and asks if there are any more green tea bags. I ask her if we were out, and she says that there were only 5 bags left. I then ask her if she needed more than the 5 bags, and she says that she needs like 10 or so more. I tell her that what we have out is all that we have left, unfortunately, and we won't be getting more for a little bit. She gets cranky that there aren't enough. She isn't necessarily mad, just kind of like that old person, I have no patience type of thing. Don't know how to describe it. Let me put some math out there before I continue. If she needs 15 green tea bags every day, that's like 100 bags a week, and about 450 bags a month. Seeing as how a standard box only has like 20 to 30 bags in it, and the Costco bulk has 6 standard boxes in it, we would need to buy a Costco box every week just for her alone. For context, before they showed up, a Costco bag would last us at worst a month, but usually 2 months average. Of course, I'm not going to call them out for taking literally all of our green tea, so I just apologize again and told her that we will get more green tea out there as fast as we can. She grumpily says okay and grabs her breakfast before going back up to the room. But I really don't like these types of people. I used to be that type of person who grabs as much free stuff as possible to potentially use later, even weeks after I leave the hotel. But since I started working at one, I realized that these people kind of suck. Not only does it limit other guests from having said items, like the tea, but it does put a hole in our inventory and makes us lose money. And this couple has the cheapest rate possible since they're staying for months. I mean, if you're going to actually use it, then that's fine. Go ahead and take it. But unless they're making pitchers of green tea and drinking gallons of the stuff daily, who really needs 15 bags of tea a day? My friend works at a coffee shop. Splenda is by request only because people were swiping handfuls of the packets to take home. More of a, I don't work there. I used to work at a local ice cream store that did not offer any coffee or espresso, just ice cream, milkshakes, and smoothies. Another local ice cream store did offer a wide range of coffee and espresso drinks. The two had wildly different appearances, themes, and brand colors. One night, a woman came in and we had this exchange. I want an affogato. Ice cream with espresso poured over it. Me. I'm sorry, we don't offer any hot drinks. Other store does, including affogato. They are located a few blocks up the street. Karen. Don't be ridiculous. Give me an affogato. Me. I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but I believe you must have confused this store with the other store. No, I've had it here before. Why won't you give me one? Me. I'm really sorry. I just can't give you something I don't have. The other store is just up the street. I want to speak to your manager. I'm the only person here, but you could call tomorrow morning to speak with her or log a complaint on our website. I cannot believe this. Me. I really don't know what else to tell you. Sorry. Other store has affogato, and yeah, she storms out. The next morning, she called to complain to the manager that the very rude girl who was working last night refused to give her an affogato, to which the manager replied that the reason I refused to give her one was probably that we don't serve avocado, and she must have confused us with the other store. She yelled at the manager too and hung up. I remain baffled by this encounter to this day. My new employee, 24 female, refuses to do her job. Unfortunately, she ends up learning the hard way. Hi all, I'm 40 male, a senior designer of a very small company. I've been overwhelmed with work, and about 6 months ago, we hired someone to be my junior. I'm not technically her boss, but as her senior, I basically act as a substitute for one. I was a little suspicious of this girl, who's 24, because she seemed to have different experience than someone who would have wanted to apply for this role. She majored in UI/UX, but we had a lot in common and she seemed friendly. I used to work as a team lead for a game design studio and managed a bunch of younger employees who kind of saw me as a team dad, and she reminded me of the kids who used to work for me there. My last role was more competitive, but my wife is pregnant and I wanted to take an easier job to help her out with the pregnancy and baby. I wanted to ease her into things, but apparently she had some training scheduled for UI/UX person during her downtime. We don't have downtime here. I saw she had a meeting on her calendar with him after work hours, so I told her she didn't have my permission to do that. She said she had finished all the design work, but that's only because I was shielding her from the harder work. I'm the one having to do the difficult projects, and she's not even a little thankful that I'm saving her from having to work weekends. I didn't tell her to do these tasks, but as an adult, it's her job to take initiative and volunteer. I've tried to look out for her best interests and to be a friendly boss, but I also have to remind her that I'm in charge. During a meeting, when I was having a really horrific day, mostly because I was picking up work she should have been doing, plus stress of my wife's pregnancy, I snapped and called her a name I definitely shouldn't have. She looked upset and ended the call without even saying bye. I know it was unprofessional of me, but I've been called much worse than that in previous jobs, and I assumed she'd get over it. I was friendly with her via IM the rest of the day, but she didn't reply. I got an email from HR saying she had requested us, me, her, and HR, to meet about this incident. I'm not sure what to do. My wife is saying that calling her this name was crossing a line, and even if she's lazy and doesn't want to do her job, and I can see that it wasn't the right move, but going to HR seems way out of line. I know that I shouldn't have insulted her, but I feel like overall, she's consistently been the problem here. Am I the jerk? Bruh. Okay, I'm almost 42 and I have a senior role. I'll explain it really slowly. You're the jerk. Here's why. She isn't telepathic. She doesn't know you're shielding work. Give her tasks that you want her to do. You want her to do the work? Give her the darn work. What's up with that? Also, what she does after working hours is none of your business. And don't use unprofessional language at work. You're going to get in trouble with HR, whatever you think. Thank you. I'm like, wait, she's lazy? She finishes all the work you give her, and you haven't told her you aren't giving her other work? She schedules further training for outside work hours, which you think you can tell her she can't do? But because you know you are shielding and are stressed by the work she doesn't know she isn't doing, you are going to resent her and call her names? You are aware you've told us nothing she's actually done wrong, just the things you assume and then act like have been proven through none of her actions. There is literally no reason for a boss to call an employee a name like that, ever. Even if she had done none of her work and had been lazy, it's still not justified. But also, that's not even what happened. And by the way, you aren't withholding work because you gave her work and she couldn't do it. You are withholding work because you decided from looking at her that she'll fail at it, and you aren't even going to inform her of what she should be practicing for you to be able to give her more work. I'm starting to wonder if the last group of younger people under you called you a dad in the endearing way, or if they meant it in an overly controlling, judgmental, disciplinarian way. You're the jerk. Am I the jerk for kicking my mom out of my house because of how she reacted to her partner not liking my wife's chili? My mom and I have just come off of a 3-year estrangement. Her and my wife hated each other from day one, just really clashed, and my mom was going through some stuff in her personal life and acting out. We mutually agreed it wasn't fixable and we should go our separate ways. I recently reconnected with her at a party and told her that I wanted to try to fix things. My wife supported this. My wife is with someone I'll call Rob. I'm pretty sure they are engaged, but to be honest, not 100% sure. We've seen my mom a couple of times since reconnecting, and I can tell she is really trying. She seems extremely anxious and too nervous to talk, so we are taking it really slow, but I do believe that is her trying. Recently, we invited my mom and Rob over. My wife was making chili in the crock pot, and it was done, but we weren't ready to eat. She had some tortilla chips and said she likes dipping it in the chili and invited them to have some while we waited. Rob took some and gagged. I don't think he did it on purpose, and he seemed embarrassed, but my wife's chili is very sweet. She uses maple syrup, chocolate powder, cinnamon, and brown sugar. My mom laughed, which upset my wife because she's always been smug about not thinking my wife is a good cook. I could see my wife getting annoyed and snapped at my mom. Rob looked kind of ill and excused himself. My mom stood there for a minute in silence and then bolted after him and started banging on the bathroom door and demanding to be let in. He was ignoring her, and she started freaking out and said she wanted to be hugged. She has some anxiety and PTSD related stuff, and he is her comfort person. Just as I got to the door to tell her to stop banging, Rob let her in and I heard their conversation. Rob was saying that they had to get out of here because he can't eat that chili. My mom was kind of teasing him about, "Aw, you didn't like it?" and telling him she served it with rice with raisins and sugar and a maple sauce. A lie. And he said it tasted like dog food with sugar and he was going to have nightmares. I saw red and my mom was laughing. It just brought me back to how smug she used to be and how she looked down on us. When they came out, I told her to leave. My mom got really quiet again and said it was creepy that I was standing outside of the bathroom door. She said she's been trying and she feels I'm looking for reasons to hate her. I told her to just go because I was too emotional to talk to her. She left willingly, but Rob told me I can't just nitpick and kick her out and then think she is going to want to continue to put work into this relationship. My girlfriend is trying to make me shower more than once a week. Not gonna happen. I, 24 male, know that a lot of people will just look at the title and just say I'm in the wrong because of the stigma, but hear me out. It's winter where I live, so I'm consistently cold and not really sweating or anything. I usually shower when I feel gross, and it usually takes me 5 to 6 days before I actually start to feel gross. I'm not crazy. In the summer when it's hot and sticky, I shower every 2 to 3 days like normal, but it just doesn't feel necessary in the winter. Anyway, the inciting incident here was on Sunday. I was ordering more shampoo and commented on how the price had almost doubled since last time. My girlfriend, who's 29, asked when I last ordered it, and it was sometime in mid-2020. She was shocked. How did it take you almost 3 years to go through a single bottle of shampoo? I told her that I don't use a lot, and eventually we got into how frequently I shower, and she acted like I was crazy. She didn't even know that I was averaging 1 shower a week because I keep good hygiene. I groom myself regularly, and I wear deodorant, so I don't think anyone can really tell the difference. Then my girlfriend, we'll call her Granite, just starts going on about how, "Oh, that explains the smell," and stuff like that. I totally think she was just making it up at this point. I've been dating her for 2 years, and she's never commented about my smell or anything. There's no way she just happened to decide that I smell bad now that she knows my shower schedule. She's just trying to shame me. We argued for a while about it, and then she went home. Today, I saw my mom, who's 56, for lunch, and I told her about it. She agreed with me that it's fine and that she's never thought that I looked greasy or unclean. My mom also said that I should consider showering at least a couple of times a week if Granite has a problem with it. But if she can't actually tell the difference, why bother? I'm considering trying to say that I'm showering every other day, but keeping my normal routine. If she can actually tell the difference, she will know. But if not, then it will just be a little white lie. Is this wrong for me to do? Am I a supervillain just because I'm not following the societal norm? I remember reading that overshowering can cause head lice, but no one even talks about that. Reddit, has anyone else been in a similar scenario? Update. Hey everyone, appreciate the comments from people who are kind and tactful in their replies. I've done some research after seeing the overwhelming amount of responses, and I'm going to start showering more to prevent the buildup of harmful bacteria. Also, some people pointed out that I accidentally said Granite for the fake name. I'm dyslexic and I meant to put Garnet. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Hope you all have a good night. You're the jerk. Look, I only shower every 2 to 3 days too. It's better for your skin and hair moisture. Can't find anything about head lice though, and I don't know where you're in so much contact with lice that it's a concern. But your girlfriend is much closer to much smellier parts of you than your mom is. It's entirely possible she's been playing down your smell so she didn't embarrass you. Now that she knows it's a stubborn choice at her expense, she's not going to power through. If you're worried about your skin, make them cold showers and moisturize after. You're the jerk. Listen, I'm unemployed and I sit on my butt all day. I do not get warm. I shower every 3 days. If I were with someone, or hope they would get near me, you better believe that I'd be showering every day or every other day. You're the jerk. Ew. The fact you're looking for acceptance on this instead of taking 5 minutes out of your day to shower speaks volumes. You're the jerk. A shower takes 10 minutes. Your girlfriend has been tolerating your smell for 2 years, afraid to upset you by saying anything. What kind of voodoo science believes showering could cause parasites? Not the jerk. Water shortage crisis in America is a real thing. One thing I will never understand about Americans is how you all act like you care about preserving water, electricity, and the environment. Yet, here you have a man literally preserving water by taking a shower once a week, and you all treat him as if he's scum for it. It is heartbreaking to see. In my country, nobody takes a daily shower, and once a week would be considered a very fortunate opportunity for the upper middle class. When I was younger, I didn't even know what a shower was. We would just wash ourselves off with wet rags every so often. It seems to me that the privilege many of you have has completely gone to your head, and you look down on others who don't see the need to take a shower every day, thereby wasting hundreds of gallons of water. If anything, I applaud OP for going against the norm and not giving in to wasting water like most Americans. Edit. You can disagree with me all you want, but calling me hurtful names and scolding me and insulting my country and its people is not acceptable. I know there are many Karens in America because I've read many of the stories, but it's unfortunate that so many of the younger people as well, who are supposed to be more open and accepting than the older generations, is, to be perfectly honest, no different in how judgmental you all are. Edit 2. Since some of you brought it up, yes, toilet paper is another completely unnecessary waste. As long as you wash your hands properly afterwards, hand is a much cleaner and more sanitary way to clean up after your business. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
Bruh, all dudes start to get stinky after about a day or so. It's just part of being a man. Just take a shower, bro.
Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come out to the front for any reason, so I did. I'm a 20-year-old male that works at a very popular restaurant in a very snobby area. My main job is to assist the servers in any way I can, so they only have to worry about sweet-talking the customers. I do all the heavy lifting for them, whether it's cleaning their tables or taking their drinks and food to their tables. I'm doing it, and all they have to do is focus on making the customers laugh. They get tips that range from $17 to $40 per table, while I make $8 an hour, and I get treated poorly. Enough backstory. Cue the malicious compliance. My manager came up to me in a "I'm better than you" mood and told me to deep clean the floors, ice makers, walls, trash cans, and racks, and to not come to the front for any reason. I'm very annoyed at this because none of those things are my job duties. We have a staff that deals with all the cleaning of the back, so it didn't make any sense to have me do it. These tasks would have taken me an hour and a half max, but I was feeling a bit cheeky and decided to really deep clean the back until it was spotless. About 30 minutes later, the same manager comes up to me and tells me that there are 4 tables that need cleaning and 2 other tables just got set, and I need to bring their drinks to them. I looked at this man with a stare of a 20-year-old that has no bills to pay, and I said, "No, I'm not done cleaning." He looked shocked and responded angrily, "You can finish later. They need help." And I countered with, "No, it's filthy here. We don't want a health inspector to just walk into this filth, do we?" He storms off like a toddler that didn't get their candy. 2 hours go by and I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing as if I was working for Chef Gordon Ramsay himself. The same manager comes back again with a smirk and says, "Wow, this looks like it's going to take you all day long. Maybe you should come to the front and help the servers since there's a huge Sunday rush." I replied with, "You know, you might just be right," and I go back to cleaning. He storms off again. Fast forward to 2 minutes before my shift ends. My knees, legs, and fingers are all aching from cleaning. I shuffle my way to the front where my manager has been waiting for me, and he says, "You finally decided to come help, huh?" And I look at him without saying anything and clocked out, and then I tell him, "Sorry, I'm not clocked in." I walked out to my car while he was blowing my phone up. I didn't care. I had 5 days off, back to back, and he can't fire me since I did as he told me to. The moral of the story is, don't think you're better than someone that has nothing to lose. Edit. For all the people that have been commenting that he can fire you, yeah, you're right, he could. But he won't do that because I'm the only one that is working the position, and no one has applied to come work at the place for $8 an hour. There are more details to the story than what I told, so instead of trying to be smart, just ask, why do you say that, instead of assuming I'm just some entitled kid who thinks they can run the world. Thank you for reading. Edit 2. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I can't read most of y'all's posts, but I'd like to say thank you and answer a couple of questions. I don't have any living, food, or insurance bills. The only things I have to pay for are my flight school and saving up for a car, which I don't consider bills since I'm not being hunted down for those. I'm also having a job interview tomorrow at a place that pays $17 an hour, and I'll be working 1/3 of what I am at my current restaurant job. Lastly, I do get tip shares from the servers, but it goes straight to my paycheck, so that means that the servers can report less of what they make and give me less. So instead of making $8 an hour, I'm making $9 an hour. I did the math through my paycheck. Thanks for reading. Am I the jerk for saying my wedding will be a no young adults wedding, even though my family isn't happy about it? I, 55 male, have always loved kids, even though I never wanted to have any of my own. In July will be 20 years since I married my wife, who's 48. We were talking about having a big party to celebrate and decided to redo our vows as well. For context, I have come to seriously dislike this trend of child-free weddings. Yes, they make noise and don't behave perfectly, but that's what makes weddings fun. Most weddings nowadays are so boring and lifeless. Recently, 2 young cousins and a niece, all in their 20s, had child-free weddings. As I said, I don't have kids, but that bugged me. When the first child-free wedding was announced, I expressed disappointment, but didn't push or say anything else. When my niece also decided to have a child-free wedding, I talked to my sister in private once and never mentioned any more. My sister also thought it wasn't good to exclude the kids, but that's what my niece wanted. The third wedding was no under 18s, which I think is even more absurd, but this time said nothing. So to the question in hand, last week I sent a message in the family group chat telling people to save the date, that we were planning a second wedding and a big party to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And just to be cheeky, I joked that this would be a no young adults wedding, so no 18s to 29. This was a joke, and I never intended on enforcing this. I was just trying to make a point about the absurdity of excluding people from weddings based on age. Well, as you can imagine, that didn't go over very well. People asked why, and I said it's because it's going to be an open bar, and young people don't know how to behave and drink responsibly. Similar to one excuse for the child-free weddings, because people will drink. My niece caught on that I was joking, but sent me a message privately saying it was hurtful for me to make fun of her wedding day. I said I wasn't making fun of it, only pointing out the absurdity of not allowing kids. Soon I came clean on the chat that it was just a joke. Most already had seen it for what it was, but people were still saying that I was a jerk. I didn't think it was bad until my wife saw the thread and went berserk on me. I hadn't even realized she wasn't reading the text as the situation unfolded. She apologized in the chat and told me my idiotic joke could have ruined our anniversary if I hadn't already. She was embarrassed and hurt. Am I the jerk for trying to make a point about child-free weddings? Am I the jerk for doing it without telling my wife? Am I the jerk for thinking excluding people from weddings based on age is stupid? Am I the jerk for embarrassing my wife? You're the jerk. There's nothing absurd about not wanting kids at a wedding. I don't understand what's so hard to understand about that. This is the 4th post I've read on this forum about child-free weddings just today. You're the jerk. Child-free weddings are very reasonable. They cry, yell, make scenes. It's more than reasonable to not want them at a wedding. You're the jerk. Get off your high horse. You sound ridiculous saying how disappointed you were at your family's child-free weddings. Were you paying for the weddings? Did you volunteer to babysit all of the kids? If not, shut up and sit down. As far as your immature, passive-aggressive joke, it backfired because it was dumb. Way to take away the focus of an event that should be romantic and should be about yours and your wife's love and commitment to each other. I hope, for your wife's sake, you can turn this around. You owe everyone a huge apology, and you owe your wife and niece an enormous apology for turning your anniversary into a joke and making it all about you and your ridiculous judgment. You're the jerk for going out of your way to stick it to people. Let's face it, it wasn't a joke. You were making a point as you admitted yourself, and it's none of your business how other people choose to have their weddings. You could invite kids to your celebration, but this was just petty. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk for the joke he made or not? Please let us know. Can't give me the business loan I need? Okay, I'll use your quote to secure a better one. I own a small business, and due to recent positive exposure, I've been getting inundated with new customers. Due to the increased flow of people, I've needed to expand my brick and mortar to accommodate more people. Things like retiling the bathroom, fixing up our patio area, installing better ventilation, etc. However, due to the current economic outlook, a lot of small business loan lenders are a bit more skittish about giving out larger loans. I decided to use a popular site that puts small businesses with lenders who will give them term loans at decent rates. After going through several lenders, I found one that had the amount I wanted for the APR I was looking for. The rep seemed nice in the beginning. He was very cordial and explained the process, background check, paperwork, etc. that I would need to sign and submit to secure the loan. At this point in the story, I should note that the Lender Connect company has a policy that if I get a better offer from one of the other connector companies they put you in touch with, if it's within $10,000, they'll match it with another lender if they can get you a better rate. So after talking to this guy over the course of a week, I get an offer for the exact amount and percentage rate that I wanted. I tell him that I need a day to read through it all and I'll get back to him. I figure if I'm going to take on a large sum of money, I should at least know the finer details of the contract. An hour later, he starts saying that this offer is only on the table for the next 2 hours and that if I wait longer, he will pull it and only be able to give me a lower amount at a higher rate. He then proceeds to tell me that only his company can get me the amount I need and no one else can, so they are my only option and that I need to accept right now or else I'll be out of options. Cue the malicious compliance. I immediately call the main Lender Connect rep who put me in contact with this rep. I explained that I received a great offer from them, but I wanted to see if another company could give me a similar loan amount for a better interest rate and quoted them their policy of matching with another of the lending companies they work with. The rep said to give them 30 minutes. 35 minutes later, they tell me that they found another company that would give me a loan that's 2% lower interest rate and $5,000 more than the other company. I say great, get on the phone and sign with them. 1 hour later, I called the jerk back. He sounded super smug, assuming that I would have no other options but him, and asks if I have signed the contract. I say I did, with another company, since he's operating by the Lender Connect's guidelines. I submitted his quote, and I was able to secure a better loan. I get silence on the phone for 5 seconds, and he mumbles out, "Cool beans." I then wish him a great day and good luck with securing clients and end the call. Gotta love company policies. Anyone who tries to pressure you into signing immediately is hiding something. Could be relatively benign, like, I need to get this deal across the line today to hit my bonus. Or it could be something catastrophic, like unfairly heavy penalties for late payment. But there is always a reason they don't want you to look too closely at the document. You should have seen it. I was talking with a few coworkers, and apparently something I'd gotten super used to doing in a previous job I did at the hotel and blew a handful of colleagues away. Backstory. I used to be in retail in an area bursting with old money. People who have lived their whole lives being catered to and being told yes. I was often one of the few people who told them no. There was a waiting list in my profession, and you couldn't bribe, complain, threaten, or be nice to get further up that list. People still tried, and I learned how to stand my ground against senators, CEOs, lawyers, just old money people, not to mention their wives. With that job, I got amazingly good at being strict and no nonsense in life. I stopped taking anything. It really comes in handy, both in life and professionally. The story. On our wedding block, Resume Sales gives us the time of the shuttle departure and the ceremony. On this weekend, a half hour before the shuttle was going to arrive, guests started coming down in cocktail dress. I was on mid-shift, and the PM guy and I are going about our business and complimenting the occasional outfit. It starts to feel like it's been a while when my coworker points out it's departure time for the shuttle, though it's not here. Okay, weird. 10 after, and it still hasn't arrived. 20 minutes later, and the ceremony is starting soon. Then the front desk gets a phone call that I pick up. Thank you for calling the hotel. This is Valai speaking. How may I help you? Hello, is this the super full name of the hotel? Yes, it is. How may I assist you? This is Mary Sue from the shuttle service that's supposed to pick everyone up. Are there wedding guests in the lobby? I look at our bursting lobby. Yes, there are. Changes from professional to exasperated casual talk. Oh boy. Look, you see, the bride never paid us, not even a deposit, so we told her we're not coming, but we never heard back from her. I noticed the date and time and decided to check if she had found a different shuttle. Is the wedding still at this time? Oh crap, it is. I'm really sorry. It's fine. Thanks for calling. Good luck. I hang up the phone and ignore my coworker who's looking at me confused and a bit worried. I take a deep breath, move from behind the front desk so I'm in front of it, and loudly clap my hands twice. Can I please have the attention of Jim and Jane's wedding guests? We've just received word from the shuttle that they will not be arriving, so please use your personal vehicles to drive to the venue. The front desk will be happy to provide the venue's name and address if that wasn't provided to you. Please remember not to drink and drive. Our bar will be open for drinks until 2 a.m. if you're a designated driver. Enjoy the wedding. People just looked at each other and walked out. I've never seen a group leave a lobby so organized. I stepped back behind the desk and my coworker was looking at me with bug eyes. I looked at him and just said, "I don't do shoot the messenger." He replied, "I see that." I go over to the bar to update them. Expect patrons tonight. The bride messed up the shuttle, so hopefully there'll be designated drivers. Yeah, we could hear that over here. Impressive. Thank you. Hope you get tipped well. Somehow, this became a story in the hotel and bar. When I talked with that coworker later in a circle with a couple of other front desk associates, he said, "You should have seen it. She didn't pause for a moment, just hung up the phone and walked out there without pausing, and literally nobody got upset at us." Moral of the story from me to anyone in customer service: sometimes you have to leave no room for argument. Just state the situation and don't accept any pushback. I didn't let anyone get mad at me. The front desk lady just telling them the situation, and they didn't. Don't let guests bully you for anything. Work on it and you'll get there. When you inevitably get into a similar situation, good luck. Am I the jerk for giving the dream vacation of my ex-fiance to her sister and husband? I met my ex's sister in high school when she started dating my best friend. During our senior year, she got pregnant and they married soon after. After high school, I joined the military. I served 6 years before getting medically discharged. Ex and I started dating. I got a good job that would have me leave a couple times a month, up to 10 days at a time. While doing some last-minute wedding planning, a text from her sister popped up asking, "Have you told OP about what you did with your ex-boyfriend? If you don't tell him tonight, I will tomorrow." I asked her what was that. She tried to play it off. I kept pressing her, and she said that during her bachelorette party, she ran into him, but nothing had happened. It was an obvious lie. I went through her phone when she fell asleep. There were texts and pictures with him all the way back from when we started dating. They would hook up every time I went on work trips. Sent proof to my phone. I woke her up and kicked her out and ended the relationship. She did the cheater script. I told her Stephanie looked a lot like her ex-boyfriend and showed her one of the screenshots of them together. She started to cry and I gently got her out the door. I canceled all wedding plans and needed some help calling guests to inform them that the wedding was off. My friend's wife said that during the bachelorette party, she caught them sneaking away together. When she confronted them, she gave my ex the option of coming clean to me herself or she would do it. She did not know it was an ongoing thing. Now on to the honeymoon vacation. I had planned it so that it would be perfect for my ex. It was a 10-day trip to another country that she had always said was a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list place. There were nice hotels, amazing experiences, and overall her dream vacation. I was already out about $10,000 for the wedding and more if I canceled the honeymoon trip. I made the decision to offer it up to them, since I knew that they never had a honeymoon or any real vacations since they got married when they were young and they had had kids. Also, they just saved me money and time. They accepted. They were able to get the time off work and made arrangements for the kids for the trip. My ex found out about it and she flipped out and was calling me and texting me about how much of a jerk I am for doing that to her. How I knew that it was her dream vacation. How I ruined her life. I got messages from her friends and some of her family that she lied to and blamed me for the breakup. Her ex even texted me saying that I'm not a real man and then threatened me. She must have went there last night as he shouldn't even have my number. I've not responded to them at all. But Am I the jerk for giving my cheating ex-fiance's dream honeymoon to her sister and my best friend? Take the threat to the police. You owe your cheating ex literally nothing. Not the jerk. I hope her sister will have the best time and won't stop talking about the awesome vacation for years. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for selling a used car and when the buyer called me a week later complaining, reminding her it's a used car? 8 days ago, I sold a used car to a woman. I was the second owner and I know every nut and bolt that has ever been touched on this thing. First owner was my mother-in-law and she gave me 3 folders worth of paper documenting every little thing from the day she took the key from the dealer. Also, I just had the emissions tested 6 months ago. I've driven it about 500 miles since then. I only sold it because I was handed a crazy deal on a newer car. Well, a 2012, and I can't drive too. My phone rings today. The woman tells me she registered it Monday, but she took it to a mechanic and he said the catalytic converter was ruined and was throwing codes. Okay, well, I immediately suspect that mechanic, as the code that she mentioned is almost always the O2 sensor and rarely the catalytic converter failing. It's absolutely possible that the cat failed, but honestly, that's not the thing you jump to first. You change the O2 sensors and clear the code and see if it comes back. In fact, you should change front and rear sensors because that will eliminate both from the problem, as the code covers both sensors and the cat. Anyway, she tells me the story. I replied, okay.
Well, what can you do to help me? This is very expensive.
You bought a used car as is. I can't help you if you think I'm financially responsible for this. The sweet voice disappears. She got insta-mad.
Well, I think you should do something. This feels like a scam. This is gonna cost me so much money.
Lady, I think the mechanic is lying to you. You should definitely take it somewhere else. Now she starts actually yelling into the phone.
You sold me a piece of crap that was broken. You never said the catalytic converter.
Oh no. So I yell, ma'am, repeatedly until she stops talking. Let me stop you there. You bought a used car as is. Do not call me about this car again. And I hung up and blocked the number. Now I know there is an exhaust leak just after the muffler, and I told her that. The emissions test place said that has no bearing on the results, as the cat was processing the exhaust before it hit the leak, and the leak is literally 2 inches from the exhaust tip at the back end. Again, I disclosed the leak and the vibrating heat shield that needs tightening every year or two. I told her everything, right down to the fact that I lost a 10mm bolt for the belt shroud and zip-tied it down. I tried to be 100% transparent and she bought it anyway. I feel bad because I think a shop is trying to scam her for a cat and rear O2 sensor when it's probably just the O2. But now I'm blocking her and not telling her that because she went from 0 to 987 miles per hour yelling at me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. So I know nothing about cars. But if you buy a 15-year-old car with some mileage on it, it will have problems. And then you either take it to the shop before you buy, have someone you know take a look at it before you buy, or you just don't buy a used car. Ignore her and make sure to keep both the ad and the document of sale. Not the jerk. Seems like you did everything you could to inform her of the condition of the car. Once she bought it, everything on it was her responsibility. Heck, she might even be trying to scam you. What proof do you have that anything she said was true? Maybe she's just trying to get money back from you. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.